right, good evening. We're going to bring the September 25th, 2014 Planning Commission meeting to order. Start with a roll call vote. Roll call.
Commissioner Essett.
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez-Parber.
Here.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Here.
Vice Chair Kearline.
Here.
Chair Ketchum.
Here.
And Commissioners Green and Lamotte are absent.
Okay, and we do expect Commissioner Lamont. We're just not sure when. All right, so we'll move on to approval of the agenda. We've been discussing the agenda up here, but I think if I could have a motion.
Make a motion to approve agenda? We're not moving anything around, right?
No.
Okay.
I second.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. So the agenda is approved. The next item for those in the public are public comments on items that are not on tonight's agenda. So if you'd like to speak to any topics not on tonight's agenda, this is the opportunity. Seeing none, we'll close that session and move on to consent items. With consent items, what I typically like to do is find out if there's anybody who has comments that are not in support of the proposed items. So either from the commissioner, if there's anybody from the public that has anything on 402 Scenic, 255 Olima, or 2 Claus Circle that's not in support of those applications. Okay. There is a question though. Go ahead.
The on the 255 Olima, the staff report here, the little blurb has a different total square footage than in the staff report. Staff report had 3,035 square feet, and this is 2,754.
I'm sorry, what are you looking at?
255 Olima.
But what are you seeing besides the staff report? What are you looking at?
Sorry, not the staff report. On the agenda versus the staff report. Sorry. The agenda has a different square footage than the staff report.
I'm going to assume that it's because there's a garage, and sometimes we don't count the garage, and sometimes we do. But you could ask the applicant what the actual square footage is. It's well below any floor area ratio that would be allowed for this site.
Okay.
I think
I'd have to go back in and like recheck all my plans. So
yeah. No, the question was, it's
why are they different?
On the agenda it says 1 square footage, and on the staff
Right.
report it says another.
Right. I would go with the one on the staff report.
Okay.
Often when we're doing the notice, we use what the applicant has in their application.
But the staff report is what stands.
I would go with the staff report.
Got it.
Right.
I have one question for staff also on that one item. For 255 Olima, is there any secondary unit or plans for a secondary unit in that property?
There's not a second unit right now, but you'd have to ask the applicants if they were ever going to apply for one. There's plenty of parking. I mean, if they wanted to apply to put a kitchen in, maybe in the area over the garage, they would have to go through the process just like anyone else. But
So I'm going to ask the commission, if we have items on consent and we have questions, we should pull them off and actually address them so we can have these questions answered if we have them. So consent is typically so we can just, we've reviewed it, we've approved it, we don't have questions. So in the future, if we have consent items that we have questions on, please bring that up before we approve the agenda. Okay. Are we okay? Good. On 255 only?
Oh, no.
Oh,
not
good.
on 255.
Okay. All right. On one of the other ones?
2 Claus Circle is the applicant here. I just, I was looking at I don't know if this is the appropriate time to ask about the...
So I want to ask staff's advice. Should we, now that we've approved the agenda and we're having lots of questions and we're asking the applicants questions, what's your advice?
It's been my experience, it's really up to you all, but that if these are clarification questions like on the square footage or whatnot, then you can entertain those questions to staff before you actually pull an item. But if you start getting into the woods on details or, more than just straight informational clarification questions, then you want to pull it. Okay. That would be my recommendation.
So I think what we've asked so far were clarifications with staff. Is this a clarification with staff?
No, it's a design question.
Okay. So again, I think it's really important if we're going to have questions. That's why we pull things off consent. We don't leave it on consent so we can have a full discussion.
Yes.
Okay. So we would need a motion and a second to pull. So there's now a request on 2 clause to pull that from consent so we can have discussion on it. Is there any comments on 402 Scenic? Any questions? And 255 Olima, any comments or questions? Okay, so what I would propose if somebody were to make a motion is to pull 2 clause circle for further discussion, and then I'd like to see a second motion just to wrap up the rest of consent so that we can close that out, and then we will take up 2 clause circle first after we close out consent. So is there a motion to pull 2 clause circle for discussion?
Yes, I move to make a motion to pull 2 clause circle
Okay.
for discussion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we're going to pull 2 clause circle off. We'll have it as the first public hearing item. As for the rest of the consent calendar, 402 Scenic and 255 Olima, is there a motion to approve those items as the remaining consent?
I make a motion to approve the remaining 2 consent items, 402 Scenic and 255 Olima.
Is there a second? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And there's
I'm abstaining.
1 abstention.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I
Yes.
think Commissioner Shelby needs a little help getting a chair down there.
You came at such an opportune time. No? Okay. All right. Okay, so if you were here for 402 Scenic or 255 Olima, those are approved. There is still a 10-day appeal period, $500 fee at town hall. So check in with staff before proceeding. 225, okay. Got it. Okay, so we will take up 2 clause circle. I'm assuming it's brief, but I just want to try to make sure that if we're going to have more discussion that could morph, that we do it in a way that allows us to deal with it properly. So for 2 clause circle, I guess
Okay.
let's go with the staff report.
Okay. These owners purchased the house, and the previous owners had converted an area over the garage into living space, but it didn't meet ceiling height requirements, so they were informed in their resale that they weren't allowed to use it as living space. And they're now applying to legalize the living area by raising the roof 6 feet to create a 462 square foot master bedroom, bath, and walk-in closet. It will increase, let's see, what will it, okay. The project requires a use permit because the parcel is substandard in size. It's 5,060 square feet, and the minimum lot size requirement is 6,000 square feet. It complies with all the setback regulations, floor area regulations. It will be one of 2, it will become one of the only 2-story homes in the neighborhood. Most of the homes are 1-story on Klaus Circle, but there is another one on the opposite corner that is also 2 stories. The houses in the neighborhood range in size from 979 square feet on a 6,000 square foot parcel to 1,913 square feet on a 5,342 square foot site. Therefore, the proposed 1,492 square foot residence will not be out of character with the other homes found throughout the immediate neighborhood, and therefore we're recommending that you approve the project based on the findings and subject to the conditions contained in the staff report.
All right. So if we do have questions for staff, we can ask them, or we can just bring up the applicant right now. Okay, so if you're here for 2 clause, come on up. I think probably the best is just give us a really quick background and maybe just a couple of quick questions, but okay. Push your button. It would be an introduction to what you're trying to do, that's all. But if staff covered it, you can just tell us that. Yep, he's got it.
Staff did cover it, pretty much. We're just trying to add a little extra space, have a bigger bedroom, bathroom above the garage, which is, like she said, already a space, and so we just want to be able to utilize that space.
Okay, so my question is regarding not so much the height, but the massing of the, what you're going to end up with. And I just wanted clarification on the design. It looks like your overall height is 22 feet now. I'm looking at sheet number 4 of 12. And I realize these are schematic. So I guess my question was, did you consider breaking up maybe the materials? Right now you've got like a 22-foot high tower. And I know these are schematics, but it seems that you need to kind of break up maybe the materials or step it back a little bit. Or I don't know if you considered doing a hip roof to mimic the other roof or the existing roof of the overall structure. And you could probably even gain a couple of feet there in height. Just to soften it, I'm trying to figure out if there's a way to soften it on the street side.
Are you familiar with the height regulations for that
Yes.
particular zone?
Yes,
So we're currently at 22 6 3/4.
right.
And what is your knowledge of the maximum height?
Well, I know that you haven't exceeded it, so my question is more of an aesthetic question, or just breaking it up and softening it, and I don't know if you would consider doing anything to kind of break up the facade in terms of materiality or the roof. Shadow lines, yeah. Or maybe even sometimes people just add kind of like a trellis to kind of frame the garage opening. Right now, it seems kind of stark.
So aesthetically, you're talking more on putting in trellis over the top of the garage
Something to
versus-
kind of break it up.
Yeah,
it
we can
seems.
definitely work, take a look at something like that, but we didn't feel that was, part of the initial design. We're trying to go through the motions and look at all of the different parameters that we need to meet in order to get approval from the town. And if a trellis is needed over the front of the garage, I wouldn't think that would be something that it would be a showstopper for this particular proceeding.
And it doesn't have to be a trellis. It would just be something architectural, either in materials to kind of break it up. Some people even project out a little bit, but where it really shows up is on sheet 7 of 12, and you see the addition from the side, and that's where it really pops out for me.
Yeah, definitely, that is the view from Sir
Right.
Francis Drake, I believe. And what you don't see there is there's a fence line below that. We can take a look at softening that. We also have to take into consideration the materials that are available to us because we
Right.
are in a WUI district. So we have to take into consideration that there's certain planking that we can use or materials, and what we have here on the paper is a vanilla approach, if you will. And, we're willing to, if it's aesthetics, we can address aesthetics. We can put trellis on there. I don't think that's a structural issue. It's not a building height. It's not a code issue. It's
Right.
something
No,
else.
it's-
It's more of a softening.
Right.
And we can take a look at that palette when we get to that particular place.
Right. Okay, yeah, and it's just, like I said, where it really popped out was on sheet 7, and I thought, oh, we've got a blank wall, and you kind of get that similar effect on the street side. So it's just breaking it up a little bit with something.
Absolutely, and that's something that, obviously the homeowners are vested in the town of Fairfax and don't want something to stand out and be an eyesore either, so
Okay.
definitely take a look at that.
Go ahead.
So that's a design,
Yeah, you can just,
Push that button.
so how would we articulate that?
Just
in-
make that a condition, that they put some kind of a design feature over the garage or along that side to break up the massing.
Okay, that
A
language.
trellis.
And-
What she said.
And I think what we want to
An
get to,
embellishment?
if we were to do that, it would be, it's a condition, it would be reviewed and approved by
Staff.
town staff. And it sounds like it's showing here on the elevation from Sir Francis Drake, but it would also be the Klaus, or it's Klaus Drive, that's the one that sort of faces the old Good Earth. So it'd be, we could have a simple additional recommendation. I think it would go under condition 10?
So for clarification, as a homeowner, the intent was to eventually get to something that would, have some sort of a trellis or covering and that not have a big stark wall. So what our goal is to actually move forward with the project as expeditiously as possible. And if it's a condition that we do that, that's fine. I don't think it's a showstopper. It doesn't require structural engineering or design work or anything else. It's just a condition that we're willing to meet, and we don't want to delay any further.
And I think what we're discussing is how to add it as a condition, but it wouldn't slow down the process for you guys in terms of this approval process.
Which west and south elevation?
Well, I think we need to name the,
4?
we should just name the facing streets. The Sir Francis Drake and Klaus Drive.
Now, I want to make sure, did you guys really want a trellis over the side that faces the gas station? They already have an arbor there, and you don't see that wall that faces the gas station. There's a fence.
I think what I was
just
getting at is,
Taylor side,
I know
right?
the design is, the design doesn't show all of that, but I think by having talking about it, having a recommendation that's general so that it can be approved by town staff, I think gets at that. I agree that.
But you guys are just talking about a trellis feature on the side facing the old Good Earth, right? Not one that wraps around the building. Yeah. Okay.
I don't even think we're talking about a trellis feature. We're talking about
An embellishment.
embellishment to break up the mass.
Yeah, some sort of
Right.
embellishment that
I know where you're heading.
breaks up the mass. So what?
And you're going to leave it up to staff?
Yes. Yeah, so it's just an embellishment feature that breaks up the mass of the building, but I do think we were talking on both sides. But
I would not recommend, without having seen a mock-up of that, given the setbacks and what's going on with the fence. I'm not sure we have a clear understanding what that means on that side, and there is a fence that's blocking a lot of the height from that side.
And there's an extensive arbor on that side of the building, right where
So it does sound like Klaus Drive then?
yeah.
Has anybody
Just the
looked
one
at the
side.
pictures that we provided?
I'm pretty sure they,
Yeah, south side pictures. I have a copy of them here.
Thank you.
All right, I think we have an idea for some
language?
broad scale language that can provide
Yeah, just
flexibility.
some wording. Add an architectural detail or material change that articulates height, embellishes the large blank wall and street frontage to improve the aesthetic quality of those walls, referring to the facades on sheets 04 and 07.
Just 04.
Oh, just 04. I mean, yeah, okay, that's fine. So just kind of generalizations.
I just had one question for staff. Were there any concerns from the neighbor on the east side regarding any windows or window placement?
they've been noticed, and they didn't call us, and they're not here.
Does anybody need to see this picture? Were you guys able to find it?
Yeah, we've got
Okay.
it. Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to approve 2 Klaus Circle, application 1433, with the amendment of embellishment.
Number 10.
As condition number 10.
So you have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. So the application with the minor modification is approved. There is a 10-day appeal period, so do check in with town staff and talk to them about what they need to see for the this new condition that we just talked about. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. So now we are on to item 4, 48 Geary Avenue, application 14-31.
Yes, this item was continued from the August 21st commission meeting, where the commission encouraged the owner and his architect to meet with the neighbors or communicate with them to see if some of the neighbors' concerns and the commission's comments could be addressed through project redesign. The comments were as follows. 1, the house should be limited to 2 stories only. 2, the proposed 3-story house is out of character with the neighboring houses. 3, there will be a loss of 2 on-street public parking spaces in the neighborhood when the parking is constructed. 4, the color was an issue. 5, the perception that the mass could be changed by color, treatments of the exterior, etc. 6, reduction of deck size. 7, conditions of approval should include compliance with the recommendations contained in the Earth Science Geotechnical Report. And that actually is usually automatically a condition. They have to build per the geotechnical report, but I just added it as a condition. So item 7 has been addressed. The applicant has submitted a revised site plan where he shows the decks pulled back the 3 feet that staff requested, and he also provided an alternative color palette. And that would conclude, our original recommendation was for approval with conditions, and so that hasn't changed.
Are there any questions for staff? Go ahead. Lost your mic.
So in your staff report, then, are you saying that essentially the modifications that we're seeing tonight are just the deck being pulled back 3 feet and the color change? Other than that, there's no other changes?
Correct.
And what about the rails? Last time the rails were not solid, and the fire department said something about that. Have we had designs with that?
The elevations that had been submitted were basically incorrect because the decks were shown getting to within 1 foot of the setback of the property lines, and when you do have a deck within 1 foot of the property lines, the fire department requires that you build a solid wall. So the elevation showed an open railing and open underneath, and that was not what the house was going to look like if the decks extended as far out as they did. So they've been pulled back so that now the elevations that is what the house will look like, but it'll be set a little bit further from the property lines.
So the setback itself is what allows what corrects the drawings that we saw earlier?
Correct.
Last month. Okay. Are there any other questions at this point for staff? I just wanted to, did you have any additional dialogue with the applicant or members of the public? I know that there's items that were submitted as part of the packet, but was there any other?
Neighbors brought in letters, but we didn't discuss with the neighbors.
Okay.
We didn't interact with them, and of course, we did go back and forth with the owner when he was submitting new items, but.
All right, and this, in terms of new items, this is the only new item
Yes.
that we received, okay. All right, any other questions? So, ready to hear from the applicant? If you're here, there you are. If you can just go through, I think, we had a good discussion and you heard some of the concerns and comments, and so kind of from your perspective, what you've done to address some of those, and sort of, we'll go from there.
Well, I talked to Brett, who is the neighbor directly behind me. Excuse me.
Okay, so give your name and address just so we have it for our
Sure.
record. Thanks.
Tim Halleck is 48 Geary Avenue. I talked to Brett, who was at the meeting last month, and he is at 118 Taylor, and he is the person who would be viewing the building that looks like this. I don't know if you guys have that. It's not a very attractive site. I talked to him. By the way, this is taken from the ground, which is the lowest point in his property. His house sits higher up off the ground, so that's not his view from his house. It's his view from the lowest point of his property. He said he's fine with the height and the size of the building. He said he planted bamboo trees, and by the time I'm done, he said it won't be an issue. And he said, I don't have a problem with the size of your home. He said he didn't like the color. So I asked him, the conversation was very cordial. I asked him, what colors do you want, or would you like to see? And he mentioned green or an earth tone color, and so I selected the two that you have. The green would be the base, and the earth tone would be the trim. And that was it. And then as per your recommendation, I reached out and called the Engels, and we had a brief conversation. I had a brief conversation with Randy. They're the owners of 122 Taylor, and his concern was solely the size of the building. And I cut to the chase as well and said, look, I gave up a much-wanted rooftop garden deck for you. Nobody else objected. I thought I could take care of this without coming to the city. Apparently, you know, it wasn't enough, and I'm not lowering the size or shrinking the property of the size of the building anymore. So, and if also, maybe a technicality, but if you look at a side view of the house on the drawings, I have it down as page 8304. The only direction we could go on the house is up the hill. That's the only direction we could go because we were limited. I was limited on 3 sides by setback requirements. So if you look at the house, it's really two-story houses stuck together. There's only about 1.5 feet of living space that transverses all 3 stories, that ties the house together. And that was the best I can do in working within a relatively small footprint. And also, if I may, on the packet that has the 4 pictures, on the 4 pictures on the upper left-hand corner, there's a view from the Ingalls home. It's not the grotesque view from the backyard of Brett's house, from the lowest point of his property. But if you look at the view from 122 Taylor, my house is down in a hole. Even when I'm completed, they will clearly be able to see over the top of my roof. And I think I'm going to build a beautiful house, personally. So, that's it.
Okay. Thanks. Do we have any questions? Or do we want to open it up to the public? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to open it up to the public. If there's anyone from the public who'd like to speak on this application, please give your name and address. And we've got 3 minutes.
I'm Randy Engel, 122 Taylor. This is my wife, Sarah. As we spoke of at the last meeting and in the letter that I sent, we still feel that the impact of this large edifice, this 3-story house, where there is currently a 2-story house, will be a major impact to the character of the neighborhood. The location of this house is not on flat land per se, but it's on a small slope at the base of a hill. However, the land, the property, and the residents surrounding it would be looking directly at this house. It would become the dominant structure with 3 stories in the immediate neighborhood of the 5 or 6 houses in the immediate neighborhood around it. I want to point out an item that happened shortly after the last meeting, and I was standing out in front of my yard, and a woman walked by and said, "Oh yeah, I saw you on TV last week," and she was referring to this televised thing here. She said, "I didn't even know there was a 2-story house down at the bottom of the hill." And we said, that is exactly our point. You don't even see it unless you look. But you add whatever it is, 9.5 or 10 feet onto that existing structure in a very boxy fashion. It will become the dominant structure of the neighborhood and change the character in the neighborhood dramatically. Mr. Hallekas pointed out that there's some other 3-story structures along the side of the hill along Roca. That is true. However, those houses are all up against the side of the hill. The entrance to them is at the top of the hill, and none of them are obscuring anybody else's line of sight, and they all have a line of sight across the swale that is defined by Roca and Taylor. The construction of this house with that 3-story would obscure the line of sight of everybody in that immediate neighborhood. It is very much out of character with what's going on. We have no problem with a, raising the height and keeping it a two-story structure. We already agreed and compromised that building a parking deck at that location, though it would completely destroy the privacy of our backyard, we're saying, okay, that's what would be necessary here. We're more than willing to compromise there. Even though we don't like it, we will compromise there. But to build a three-story structure at that location would be a very obtrusive structure for the entire neighborhood. I think that's all I have, unless you have something more.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Is there anyone else from the public that has any comments? Okay. So at this point, I will close the public comment and bring it back to the commission for discussion. I actually wanted to ask staff a question. So what's interesting about this, and we've had this happen a few other times, is that the town's height limit is defined by feet and stories, whichever is more restrictive, right? So you couldn't have 3 stories if you exceeded the height limit. But I mean, so I guess what I'm getting at is it an and, or it's
No,
not an or, it's an and.
It's an and.
Yeah, so it's an and. If this were considered a downslope lot, no, if this were considered an upslope lot, the height limit would be 28 feet. If this is considered a downslope lot, the height would be 35 feet. But regardless, 3 stories would be authorized, is authorized through the town code.
Right.
When I look at what's presented in the staff report, the existing height is 24.5 feet. The proposed height is 22.5 feet. Now, there is an increase from 2 stories to 3 stories, but it's fully compliant and within the town code. It's not a variance or request for a variance to the town code.
Right.
And the reason I point that out is that there's been discussion about 3 stories versus 2 stories, but in this case, you could have a 2-story structure that was the exact same height or even higher and be fully compliant as well. I know last time we had a lot of discussion about the mass and setbacks and how to make this work, and it's a difficult location, but getting back to what's been presented as a concern versus what's authorized in the town code, this seems to me to be an issue of it's not exceeding any height limits, and the fact whether it's 2 stories or 3 stories actually doesn't come into play.
Right.
From the consideration that we're really looking at. What
Correct.
we're looking at is the mass and structure and design review type questions and issues like that. But
And they are accessing it now from the uphill side, so their height limit is actually 35 feet.
right. But even if it
Did you
were,
already say that?
even if it were
Downslope.
not changed, it's still
Right.
compliant with either way.
Right.
And I think I would have a different perspective if we were switching where it's accessed from, and therefore you can have 7 more feet, and that's having an impact. But the reality in this situation is it's not changing, and it's compliant with either way you consider it. So I just wanted to make sure that that's kind of that's the consideration that you're making as part of your recommendation. And
Yes,
So,
you have it.
thanks.
Hit the nail on the head.
all right, go ahead.
Linda? Sorry. And I have a question somewhat along those lines with regard to the setbacks, because I know while the height isn't on that table in terms of compliance with the regulations, sorry, on the height, so the height as you articulated on that compliance table goes down. The setbacks are an area where there is a fairly dramatic shift, and I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit more about that.
Well,
And
the
I believe it has to do
existing,
with
the existing
parking.
house maintains smaller setbacks than the one that's proposed. He's pulled in a lot of the sections, and while the decks do still encroach into the setback, the house he's proposing maintains greater setbacks than the existing house.
So it's the decks
mean-
and it's the car, part of it is adding the extra car space as well that encroach? No?
Well, I mean, there's no way, I'm not sure I'm understanding where you're going. Are you talking about the side setbacks? I mean, there's no doubt, this parcel is substandard even if it was on flat ground. And there's no way they could comply with the setbacks and have a house. So there's going to be some kind of encroachments into the setbacks, because otherwise they wouldn't be allowed to rebuild. So on these really tight lots, it's kind of a trade-off. It's really hard to judge what's best for everybody, because there has to be some kind of encroachment. Because I think.
But in terms of the table, because it wasn't changed, what's been proposed now is actually a 3-foot setback from, I guess that's what I was wondering, because the table is from the original application. What's been presented now is that
The decks
are pulled
maintain a
back.
3-foot setback on both sides.
Front, rear, side to side.
And then the reason that the combined front and rear setback
Is because of
is
the
difficult
parking
is
deck.
because there's a parking deck that's
Right.
going in, as well as a fire truck pullout.
Right.
And-
They have to be built in the front
And
setback.
I know that there's lots of parking to the neighborhood, but at the same time, having a fire truck pull out is a benefit to the neighborhood. So it's kind of it is a tough trade-off, but it's meant for public safety. But because this table wasn't updated, I was just trying to figure out what it would be if, with this 3-foot, and it sounds like the
Yeah, the only thing,
combined, or that the side setbacks instead of 0.5 foot would be
6.
3 and 3? Yeah, okay.
Right.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Does the color palette address the concerns that we raised last
Make
time?
a comment. I mean, as you can hear us discussing, it's a tough situation. I think one of the neighbors who wrote a letter put it pretty concisely, saying it's filling the donut hole, which is always the hardest lot to improve. It's the one that's the least built out in, being the last into the neighborhood. This neighborhood's pretty built out already, and it's within the height restrictions or limitations, and I think the color palette is a great improvement. Thank you. And I think that's going to make a big difference in the perception of the mass of the building. So I think the loss of parking on the street I'm not even convinced that there's a loss of parking on the street, because the parking for this lot was part of that public equation, and now there's a parking deck for an allotted space and a fire truck pullout. So I think that even just the smallest wriggling has made it better, and I think it's within your right to use your property, and I don't have a problem with this revised proposition, so thank you.
Anyone else?
Unfortunately, I wasn't here last month, but I know we've had a few of these that have come up before, meeting the height restriction and being 3-story, and that's been something we were stuck on. I think it's that microphone that's still on. It's been a contentious issue, because we've said the town doesn't allow 3-story buildings. So I struggle with a precedent that hasn't been applied.
But the town allows 3-story buildings. The only place it doesn't is in the commercial central. Everywhere else in town, actually,
In the hill,
28.5 feet and 3 stories is the code.
The residential properties on flat ground are limited to 2 stories, but anytime you're in the hillside, 3 stories is permitted.
I think we're having our discussion. I think we've had our open period. Thanks. I'm sorry I interrupted, but I wanted to make sure that it is, most of town it is 3 stories that we've had discussions about fourth stories a few times, and on flat ground, a third story a few times. But, go ahead.
I think I agree that in terms of the entitlements and the mass and the setbacks and stuff, it's a tight lot. You know, we are also design review at this point as well. So I think part of what my just kind of reaction that I'm listening to is it's a big transition from that kind of cabiny look and dark woody feel to it right now, and albeit also dilapidated and not functional. But I think the stark contrast between that and a very modern box looking design is just what people react to. And I'm not saying it's good or bad, I'm just finding myself from a design perspective reacting to that. But I do think that the colors do a lot to help that. I think it will fit in a lot better with the environment and the other houses around there in that way. And it's probably one of those houses that 4 or 5 years from now, people who hadn't seen the prior structure might not have that kind of reaction to it. So that's where I was struggling the most, was just trying to figure out what the design issues were for me, and part of it was just the switch to this kind of boxy, very modern look. So if there's any other comments with respect to that. But as far as mass and setbacks and all that go, I think you've really worked at it. I think pulling it back, it's not really pulled back, but one of my earlier concerns was if those railings had to have been solid, that would have added to the mass, but they don't. So there's no addition to the mass there, which makes me feel more comfortable with it. So, but if there's anyone else who has any other design thoughts.
I just have a couple of comments. You know, I think this is a really tough site, and I think it's, you know, not fair in a way to keep you from building something that's livable. I didn't see anything excessive about the site plan. There was nothing indulgent, or not the site plan, but the actual design. You know, your rooms, your bedrooms are still pretty modest in size. I think, you know, I wasn't here last week, but what I did see, last month, what I did see, you are going from the woodsy cabin look to something, and I think Shelley's right. People are reacting to that. However, I think you do have the right to be seen from the street. I don't think that's a problem. You know, people are trying to maybe keep the visibility down, but I think it's okay.
So we're having our discussion, and I think if you can bear with us, I think sometimes adding doesn't add. We'll just leave it at that.
So anyway, I think I don't really have a problem approving this. I think you're kind of in a tough situation.
Well, I don't know. I guess I was hoping there'd be a little more effort put to address the vertical walls. And I don't know, maybe I'm thinking maybe a trim band or something could be added, especially the side elevations. And I don't know, I'm kind of struggling with a modern design because it is a big kind of departure from the original cottage look. I do like the color change. I think that's an improvement, a step in the right direction. But I don't know if I entirely feel comfortable right now with I don't know, with the massing. Okay, I'm not sure I feel entirely comfortable yet with the massing, but I'm okay with all the other issues.
Okay, and I think what I thought about this one from last month and this month, and I think part of what I want to echo what Commissioner Caroline said. Part of what this is about is trying to work things out locally within the neighborhood and address the concerns and show some respect and compromise. And compromise doesn't always make anyone happy, and it's not always expected that it has to happen. What I find very interesting based on the discussion from the folks that spoke tonight are that there was no discussion. The things that we had talked about were addressed to some degree, but those were kind of agreed to last month. At the same time, I also value that there is a town code that has certain allowances within the town code, and I think it's important that that the commission does respect that. And I think what you've heard tonight is that the commission respects that. There's some design review issues that we've had some dialogue on, but I do think this isn't a good first step to a great community relationship, and I think that's unfortunate because what I thought could happen is at least some dialogue and some discussion. That said, I do think that this is an improvement to the neighborhood. I think it's an improvement to the it provides a safety consideration, which is very much needed up that street. I've looked at that street a lot, had personal interest up there, and decided that it was not a street I wanted to sort of be on because of the narrowness, because there really is a lot of difficulty access egress. I think that the parking structure pull-out for a fire truck at least gets there. Although having driven up there tonight, there's no way a fire truck would have even made it there because I couldn't get my small car through there. And this is just people parking on the street. So I think there are bigger issues going up in that neighborhood. That said, I do think that at least with this space, this isn't going up above and blocking, huge amounts of space. I think there are some changes in the view shed, but it's not, I think the person who's most directly affected spoke last time, but isn't speaking tonight. So, I mean, from that perspective, I think it's unfortunate that this isn't jumping off on the best foot, but at the same time, I don't feel that I'm in a position to hold this process up anymore, because I think it is an improvement that is would benefit that local neighborhood in the long term. So, do we have any ideas, or?
Is there anything, I agree that there's a couple of elevations that A303, I struggle with. I appreciate that the windows are small, which is nice for the neighbors because it's not looking out on it, but because they're small, it creates a large flat mass. And A304 also has kind of a large blank wall. Those are the two kind of mass-looking things for me that, from a design perspective, I don't know, like the last one that we were just talking about, you could stick a trellis on. I don't know if a trellis, okay, so that goes up front, so that's, yeah. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on non-structural.
But the one, so the A303 that you pointed out is facing the hill, so okay, back up into the hill, and then the A304 is the one that's actually facing the neighbor, and I think we talked about last time that the windows were being minimized to reduce the impact on the neighbor. So it's less about how it looks and more about having windows right in their backyard.
Okay, yep.
So.
Catch 22.
I mean, I do think opening up the decks railings, that provides a little depth to it that certainly wasn't going to be there with solid deck rails. So, all right. Are there any other comments, any other ideas, or is anyone ready to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve 48 Gary, application 14-31, as presented in the staff report. And as amended, how?
Well, the staff report is basically last month's staff report with a one-page change, but there's a new map that kind of goes with it. Obviously, all the designs will have to change to match the single drawing.
The revised site plan.
Right. So I want to make sure that the big packet of the plan that we have is from the old application, and I would expect that
Just with the
you would
amended
need a
site
brand new-
plan, amended site plan and colors, we'll change that in the first, in the first condition, where it
Right.
references the different plans that he's presented.
and that you would expect to see new plans that conform with
With what was
this
shown
new
tonight.
site plan.
Okay, approved per sheet A003 amended site plan with the green color swatches attached.
Is that enough
Yes.
for staff to be able to roll with?
Yep.
So there's a motion. Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote.
Commissioner Essett,
Aye.
Vice Chair Kearline,
No.
Chair Ketchum,
Aye.
Commissioner Hamilton, Commissioner Mott, Commissioner Gonzalez-Parva.
Aye.
Okay, so the motion passes. There is a 10-day appeal period, so this application or the approval by the commission can be appealed to the town council. You have to appeal within 10 days to the staff, and it's a $500 appeal fee. So that's, so check with staff before proceeding. All right, thanks. We are going to move on to item 51599 Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, application 1434. And as you can see, Commissioner Caroline will be recusing herself for this item.
Okay, can I start? Are we ready? Okay. Okay, just a little bit of history. On June 20th of 2013, so just a little over a year ago, this whole building went through a public hearing process for a use permit. They did a traffic study. They obtained a parking variance for the daily method and for the rest of the building to be used for retail. Since that time, the planning director has approved a portion of the retail to be used for office. And so the remainder, the applicants are proposing to open a business that combines a retail wine sale with sales with wine tasting and food service. The retail area will be remodeled to include an accessible bathroom, a small kitchenette, sales area, a tasting bar with seating for 16 customers, and additional seating along the front window with seats for 4 more, for a total of 20 seats. The hours of operation will be Monday through Thursday from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. and Friday and Saturday from 12 noon through 10 p.m. You have a letter attached from the owner of the building and also the person that operates the daily method that really doesn't clash with their most busiest times for their exercise classes. So it does require a use permit because this property is located in the highway commercial zone, and the proposed use is not listed as permitted in the highway commercial zone. But the code does give the Planning Commission the authority to grant use permits for uses that it determines are equivalent to uses or permitted uses or conditionally approved uses. And so staff doesn't feel that this is going to increase traffic enough to require that the traffic study be revisited. We also don't believe it's going to significantly impact the parking. We did go back and check, and there are 27 parking spaces, street parking spaces available within a block of this property. And so we think it will fit in nicely with the neighborhood, and we're recommending that you approve the use permit by adopting Resolution 1412, which includes the conditions of approval. And that would conclude our report.
Thanks. Are there questions for staff?
Yeah, and so it was already approved for retail. They just want to have a combined use, retail and wine tasting, and food service, so.
And I'm sorry, can't seem to put my hands on this letter that you mentioned.
Oh, from the owner?
The applicants are the owners of the daily method. The applicants are the owners of the building.
No, the applicants
bus-
are a
it's a
separate
separate business.
group.
Okay.
Yeah. But the Daily Method owns the building, the Daily Method where and they came through with the use permit to approve this, get this location approved as like a
Right.
generic retail space.
That's, so the Daily Method owners, and I'm sorry for confusing this, are not proposing to run this, but they are the ones who own the building and
Correct.
own the and operate
Correct.
the Daily Method.
Correct.
So when you say they're okay with the operation, they're also owners, the landlord, so they're
Right.
okay with it. Okay.
Right.
Got it.
I included a letter.
I have a quick question. Is there any difference between a kitchen and a kitchenette in this setting? And if so, does the fire department get involved, or the health department, or any of that stuff?
Yeah,
Is that anything we need to know about for that?
The fire department and the health department will need to review this, but they looked at the floor plans and didn't have any objections to it. They just said that they have to approve the construction plans before the remodeling occurs.
So that happens at the building permit stage?
Correct. And usually most of their concerns can be addressed. It's not going to result in a major floor plan change, so.
So can you explain on, if you were, so there'll be they're going to have to also get a liquor license and all those things as well. So none of those are in hand right now. Those are all
No.
Pending
Right.
our kind of approval.
People don't usually want to go through the
it's a
expense
big
and the
big
time until they
difficulty.
make sure they can get their use permit, because
All right.
you never know what's going to happen.
But is there a difference whether it's served on site or not in terms of those types of permits?
You know, you might ask the applicant that. I think if you're going to have carry-off trade and service on site, they probably are going to require two different liquor licenses.
Okay.
They're two different types, so they'll have to get those from the ABC.
Okay.
I just had one comment, which is actually on the resolution. Item 9, should that remain there, or was that from the, when the Daily Method was in place?
Oh, yes, you are correct. That should go away.
Strike that.
Thank you.
Good eye.
All right. Are we ready? More questions? Go ahead.
I have a couple of questions. The square footage, I couldn't quite figure out if it was 2017, 945, or 810, the retail area, the dedicated area, or the specific area for the...
It's 810.
It's 810.
2,000 is what the retail was originally approved at, but what happened is in between the approval of it as all being retail, the planning director, it's within his purview to approve certain changes, and so they changed a portion, like maybe a third of the 2,000 square feet to office space in the back between the rear exercise studio and this front retail portion.
Okay. And second question on the resolution 1412, number 2, the first sentence there, I'm not sure if that got added in by accident, if that's a typo, or it says the business hours of operation are from 11 Monday through Thursday and from...
11 shouldn't be there. It's Monday through Thursday from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Okay. Oh, okay, that's it.
So it should read business hours of operation from Monday through Thursday from 4 p.m. to 9, and then cross out the
Yeah,
Monday through Thursday
Thursdays.
again, and from 12 noon to 10 p.m.
on Fridays and Saturdays. Right.
And Sundays open for individual clients based on appointment.
Let's cross out the and. Okay.
Okay. Are we ready for the applicant? All right. If the applicant could come, you've heard some of our questions, a little background, first name and address, and then, thanks.
Christiana Baumsteiger for 1599 Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, Suite B. So yeah, I'm looking to get use permit for an international retail wine shop and tasting bar. We will be serving small items of food, cheese, charcuterie, items like that. We will not need a full-service kitchen, so the difference between the kitchen and the kitchenette is we won't be using large, commercial-grade ovens or cooktops or anything of that, so we won't be needing to really change the footprint of that. It would be more in the back section. If you look at the floor plan, you'll see the street side view. And then back towards the wall where the office space is in the back part of the building, so the retail space and the office space, there's a little nook back there, and that's where we would put in a sink, refrigeration to hold the cheese, fruit, vegetables, that sort of thing, and then just a little workstation, so like a sandwich type workstation where we can, cut some cheese and put together little salad plates and stuff like that. So it really wouldn't be anything too intense in changing any part of the plan of the building when it comes to the kitchen area. And the retail space is going to be 75% or more of the actual footprint of the retail area. So it's still going to be, 75% retail or more.
So in addition to wine itself, it'll be more kind of food-related items, or it'll be?
So I will be, we'll have wine by the bottle. We'll also be able to sell wine by the glass, and that, your question earlier in regards to the ABC liquor license would be a type 42, and to get a wholesale license. So I would be able to sell wine by the bottle and serve it by the glass, as well as doing tastings. So if, a customer would like to come in and try a specific kind of bottle of wine that they've never had before, they'll have the ability to do so before they were to purchase it. It would also, type 42 is for 21 and over, so no one under the age of 21 would be able to enter the retail space.
So I guess the retail is just wine, or you have
The
a
retail,
lot of
sorry,
other,
the retail will be a wine and then wine accessories on
Okay.
top of that. So
right.
anything having really to do with wine.
Got it.
Yeah, and I have spoken with a couple vendors in the area that do food prep, and so I've offered to them, if they want to join in the business of selling, their product in the shop that has to do with food. I've opened that door for them too, just to kind of help merchant with merchant, keep the doors open for community and really keep it within the Fairfax community and helping businesses, so.
Okay. Any other questions? No. All right.
No? Okay.
Thank you. Now I'd like to open it up to the public. If there's anybody from the public that would like to speak to this, please give your name and address in 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Wayne Vanderwalker. I reside at 15871 half Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. Part of my egress into my area is through the parking lot at 1599 Sir Francis Drake. I do oppose this particular establishment at this location primarily due to the parking situation and the dangers that Sir Francis Drake presents. There is overlap with the hours, the 4 to 6 p.m., and that parking lot is generally full at that time with people from the daily method, along with taking up numerous parking spots that I do not know where the town staff came up with 27 spots in the neighborhood. But if they say there is, there is. Just a lot of residential is there. In addition, taking up those 27 spots is people from the restaurant down the street, Good Earth employees, etc. I mean, the parking in that neighborhood is just terrible. In addition to that, one of the conditions that is on, I think it's the second page of the resolution here on number 1, that the applicant shall maintain premises in a neat and attractive manner at all times. Currently, the daily method there, I don't think they have cleaned that parking lot once since we've been there. Kids hang out there, they smoke, they drink their little liquor bottles that they get from someplace, leave their litter all over the place, and that has not been cleaned up. There's also currently 5 shopping carts from the Good Earth behind the bus stop, and that bus stop is also not mentioned at all in the proposal of being something that would have to be dealt with, especially if you're going to have an establishment that is for people 21 years and older. You do have teenagers hanging out at that bus stop catching the buses. So that's my basic concern, not with the business plan that they have here, but you have a liquor store right next door to where this is, already selling wine. You have the Good Earth selling wine. You have Pancho Villa restaurant and the pizzeria that all sell liquor. So there's enough alcohol sold in the neighborhood already, and I think enough is enough for this particular location. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi there.
Good evening. There, can you hear me now? Okay. I'm Rose and Frank Milani. We live at 36 Bell Avenue, 42 years residence in that area. And our issue is the parking. During the day, it's lack of parking because of the people who live or who attend the Daily Method area. Our neighborhood has been impacted by that. And then also the Good Earth. And then also, I'm thinking that if you have this many people going to this establishment, where are they going to park? And I agree with the previous speaker that where are the 27 spaces that you're talking about are, you know, and also the people who live in that area at that times when the restaurant or the wine shop is open, they need to park on the street as well. I just feel like having it's just the parking issue that I am concerned with, and I also want to second a motion to the gentleman before about having so many alcohol-related establishments in our town and in that neighborhood too, and again with the bus situation there as well. And I just see when I'm waiting for the bus there and see people coming in and out of the Daily Method, some of them are crossing the street against the light and things like that, and I'm just concerned about the safety of the people in that that use that parking area or the intersection, because it is a busy intersection. So I just don't feel we have the parking. But I do have a suggestion. I don't know if it's possible if this new wine business can come to some agreement with the hair salon or the orthodontist across the way or the Mount Tam Vision or even the cleaners, if they could use their parking lots during the evening. You know, when they're not open, those spaces are blank. So maybe, or empty, I should say, but maybe that's a possibility to help the issue of parking in the neighborhood. Do you need to say anything else?
No, the only thing I would comment on that is our area and behind there on Bell Avenue and Hill and the other streets surrounding it, they're all supposed to be signed for residents only, but that isn't happening. Already it's not happening with the Daily Method. People are circling in there. When people come down in the morning from the west going east, you can't turn left on Sir Francis Drake at that point on Kent Avenue, but so they can turn right and they come right into our neighborhood, and then they look for places to park in there. So they're floating around there all the time, and it's just there just isn't enough parking. And there's a red zone right in front of the business there where nobody can park. There's a bus stop where nobody can park. So all the people are looking for places all over the place to park, and I don't know where the 27 are either. So it's a good question.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anybody else? Comments on this application? Okay, we'll close the public comment period and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Oh. I think most of the discussion we had was around parking, so If you have anything specific to the parking, that would be, okay.
No?
It's
doesn't
okay.
matter? Okay.
You're the applicant.
So I just wanted to address both of, all of your concerns. I spoke with the dentist across the street today, Dr. James Sarman, and he was definitely willing to open up his parking spots for us Thursday, Friday, Saturday, which I'm planning on being our busiest times from when his business closes around 7 o'clock up until when our business would close around 10. So I just wanted to, let you all know that, and you all know that as well. I am an instructor at the Daily Method as well. So the retail space does have 2 spaces designated for us in the Daily Method parking lot. So that's another 2 spaces. So I understand the concerns because I am an instructor there, and I am there in the morning, throughout the morning, and then I do drive by in the afternoon, and I have lived in the area for over 28 years, so I totally understand everyone's concern in regards to parking. So I just want to let you all know that I have taken the proper steps in addressing that situation. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, back to the commission. Comments, questions? I think it would be good just to sort of review the number of parking spaces and where, in terms of the staff report, where those.
Well, we don't feel that the proposed change from retail to the retail wine tasting is going to, the parking variance was already granted. This building doesn't have enough parking spaces. Some of the neighbors have no parking, and they've got multiple residential units. There's people in the neighborhood that have parking that don't use it. They use it for storage. So the parking variance for this property was already granted, and we don't feel that the minor change in the use and the operation is enough to warrant revisiting that parking variance that was previously granted. So that's staff's position on it. And
may I add, we're aware at the staff level of the parking impact from all the activity going on, including the Good Earth, and we've actually tried to work cooperatively. They've been very cooperative with their staff to try to inhibit them from parking there. It's hard to manage the through traffic, but we're aware of that also. As you might be aware, there's an overall traffic and parking issue in the town. And hopefully someday, as we move through the implementation of the general plan, we have license at the staff level to start to work with the community in creating a managed parking approach so that people come to town and find the resources where parking are in sort of aggregated spaces and then walk out to many different things, park once and do many things. That's not always appropriate for many businesses, but in the long run, we at the staff level at the town are aware that at many hours of many days, there's a parking problem overall. Again, not to point any fingers at anyone, it's always a frustration because a lot of homeowners end up using their garage as a convenient storage area, and then they lose the on-site parking, and then they're looking for that street parking also, which technically the street parking's in a broader sense open to the public per se. So we're sympathetic to the issue, but at the same time, a vibrant community, and in the long run, finding ways to increase the available parking in the private spaces that aren't used during the night and on the weekends in other parts of the town as well as your area. I think it's a really wonderful direction that I hope we get to soon so we can use both the private resources as well as the underutilized public resources better.
Okay, so I do think that's an important distinction, and I'm glad that you were able to point that out. I'm wondering if the resolution actually addresses the parking in the way that you just described it, which is that even as under the whereases, we made the following finding. If we've already approved parking and that this doesn't change that, I still think that's an important, I want to make sure that if in 2013, a parking variance was previously granted, and this doesn't, the determination is this doesn't change. This is within that variance. I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Look at number 10, if you will.
I was looking at 4.
Oh, sorry, it actually should be 5. It's misnumbered at the end.
I was looking at 6. Granting of the use permit will not result in the parking or loading of vehicles on Sir Francis Drake in an unsafe manner.
At the very end, the last, whereas it should be numbered 5 instead of 10, it says the use of the site shall remain consistent with the formula business approval stipulations required for the site.
Okay, and I guess what I'm trying to do is be really obvious about the fact that we previously approved a parking variance, and this, it's the determination of staff and the commission that.
Yeah, so the you want the date that the parking variance was approved? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, and then I'd like to figure out where to put it, but.
It was approved June 20th, 2013.
So something like on June 20th, 2013, the commission approved a parking variance which included the daily method operations as well as this retail space.
Right.
And that based upon current review, this use is in compliance or doesn't change, and therefore that we're not granting a new variance. We're simply granting a use within an envelope that's already been created. I guess I'm trying to I want that to be really clear, if there's a way to make sure it's worded. Okay.
Keep talking.
Yeah, great.
I mean, the variance was granted for the reuse of this commercial building that's existed for many, many years. It's
right, but what I'm trying to get to is that a lot of the discussion and the concern that we've heard is related to the parking, and I think there's some aspects that I've heard that really haven't been addressed and should be addressed, but in terms of the actual parking as a barrier, we're not considering parking. We're making a determination that this use is similar to what was already permitted as in the retail space.
I may have a spot for it.
All right.
If you look in the resolution on the second page, on number 6, it reads, the granting of the use permit will not result in the parking or loading of vehicles on Sir Francis Drake Boulevard in an unsafe manner or in such a manner as to interfere with the free flow of traffic. You could go : nor does it extend beyond the original parking variance granted in the original entitlements.
So nor does it extend beyond the original parking variance granted on June 20th, 2013.
Excellent.
Go ahead.
That works for me. I had a quick question about the residential, folks had mentioned something about signs for residential parking only. There's a whole area that's San Anselmo that's not Fairfax. Is there anything like that that's under our purview, or is that in the San Anselmo residential area? Do you know anything about that?
I mean, the Bell is on Fairfax. The San Anselmo's on the other side. But Bell is really easy to get to. The other side, Hawthorne Hills, is really hard to get to.
I can't speak to the San Anselmo side of the border at this point.
But in terms of Fairfax, have we posted signs? Do we enforce it?
Yes, there's posted signs it's a difficult
it's hard
enforcement.
To enforce.
No, the signs were never posted.
There's a big yellow sign at the corner of Bell and Kent and Hill.
And
residential parking only, restaurant patrons, please no vote.
So the yellow sign would be advisory as opposed to a white and red sign that's enforceable. So it sounds like that would be something that could be considered, but that's not something we deal with. That would be a town council issue in terms of whether to put up the red no parking signs as opposed to advisory.
Right, and we, if you recall, in the Good Earth, we went around and around in this in quite great detail. And it's still, as I say, it's still on our radar. We still would like to find ways to alleviate the situation with the neighborhood.
I was just going to say, I appreciated the public comment coming up and expressing an issue, and then presenting us with an idea and a positive solution. So I just wanted to say I really appreciate when people come forward saying, here's a problem that I have with it, and here's an idea that you might think about. And I thought that was a very creative idea. I appreciated that you had already talked to those neighbors. And I think this idea of having kind of pocket neighborhoods all work together to leverage unused, spaces for each other is a great idea. So I would encourage, you to continue to do that. I don't know if there's any formalized way of doing that, but I think informally, if businesses can work together on off-peak hours, I think that's a fantastic idea to work through some of those issues. So thank you very much for bringing that up and you for moving forward on that.
And also, Mr. Chair, if I may recommend to the gentleman that spoke that lives in the unit adjacent that he accesses through the parking lot, please feel free to call Town Hall or the police department if any kids are in there drinking and whatnot. We normally get calls on those sorts of things into other parts of the town too, so please put it on our radar, and the police are very responsive. Yeah, so let us know. Just give us a call. And then also, I know the folks that own this building and run the Daily Method are, they want to be good neighbors too, so hopefully they'll hear what you mentioned about getting the parking lot cleaned up.
So getting to those actually 2 points, I'm actually interested, is there a way for us to, I think while I'm not doubting that we granted a parking variance, and I'm not trying to erode that, I think it is beneficial to have these sharing ideas for parking off hours. If we wanted to, would the town want to see an agreement? What type of definitive, if we were at the point where the only reason we were approving it was because there was the shared parking, what would you want to see?
I don't think,
not for this application, but
right. I'd have to talk to the town attorney on what our abilities are.
Okay.
It's not unlike a landlord in a residence, or let's say someone wants to put in a unit somewhere and there's not enough parking. We can't say you can only rent to someone without a car, but if actually the landlord wanted to do something like that, they could. And conversely, if adjacent property owner wanted to offer up their unused parking during certain hours in an agreement with a business like this, and that was an agreement they worked out, I'm getting out in front of a legal review here, I think we could accept that as part of the conditions of what's going on, but I can't speak to whether we can impose that. I don't think we can, but I'd have to talk to legal counsel.
But for tonight's discussion, it was raised as an opportunity. It's not something we can or would necessarily mandate in this.
I wouldn't go there
resolution.
now. Yeah.
Okay.
I have actually worked on projects in other places in San Rafael where a commercial owner actually had a contract with a parking lot for designated spaces and or at designated times, and used that contract as proof for their application that they had sufficient parking, 4 or 5 blocks away, those kinds of things. So I don't know whether some sort of, that's getting out of hand, but that might at some point.
That's echoing what I'm saying. If you remember the Leshes were going to come in with 0 parking on site and use St. Rita's and maybe the lumberyard, which is perfect. I mean, we should be using these impervious surfaces that aren't utilized when other businesses could use them. That gets us back to this long-term goal of a managed parking strategy where we use the town's parking resources, whether public, private, on-street, off-street, more efficiently. And for example, employee parking is a big deal. A lot of the problems with employees from Good Earth parking in that neighborhood, we've tried to work with them to get them out of there, but then where do they park and how do they get to the place? Well, if you look in the morning before 7 o'clock, the Good Earth parking lot west of the Java Hut is completely filled now with the employees of Good Earth. And that was a result of the town saying, hey, when one of your neighbors called us and we went out and investigated and we talked to the owners and we said, you got to get on your employees. So we're getting some traction there.
So the other issue that I'd like to make sure that doesn't get lost is the cleaning. So we have in our whereases, the applicant shall maintain the premises in a neat and attractive manner at all times. If there are complaints, we're passing a resolution. I know with use permits, those get revisited on a regular basis.
How about this?
What's the remedy?
Since it's come to our attention, why don't you let us sort of monitor the situation and talk to the owner and see, we do have the administrative citation process, and this, thank you for bringing it to our attention that that was in the original findings, and that gives us the wherewithal to make sure that things are kept tidy now.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Mine's just a little broad. I think the difficulty is as we grow and want to prosper and get more economic growth, that comes at that pressure of we want more uses and we want more people to visit our spaces, and how do they get there? And again, we're back to that managed parking plan, and I think there's loads of ideas that we can put in place at a different time. I think we're stuck that if we have two businesses operating at the same time in the mornings, we're going to create a bigger problem than trying to stagger it. So it's sort of the best use of the space given the infrastructure constraints that we face. So I understand, because I use that intersection a lot, and optometrist and dentist and dry cleaners and Maro's Pizza. So I know how packed that is. But yeah, I think there's things that we can do at the town level aside from this to help that.
Yeah, and I've had my eye on that whole east side commercial because it's a very eclectic neighborhood. And if you recall, we've had conversations about this, and I can't wait to get to a managed parking discussion, because I think there might be some ways to aggregate parking in a location that's yet to be revealed that could help that whole enclave. The whole enclave is hurting.
All right. The last discussion was about the liquor, just the sales, and that seems to be a typical thing in a lot of places, but it seems to me that, do those things get addressed when a state license is requested, or that really is? I mean, the zoning for this allows this kind of a use, so in terms of where we are with our town zoning, this is a use that's licensed.
The town doesn't have any
and
regulations on that.
authorized.
It's all handled by the ABC.
Right. In terms of how many in a strip, and okay. So just pointing that out, that is could be addressed, those concerns could be raised in a different form. Okay. Any other comments or?
No, I just think, I think the variance was already granted for a retail space. The hours were already set, and so I think in some respects we're actually fortunate that this particular use is a staggered use, because it could have come in as a, exactly the same time use, and it wouldn't have even had to come before us, because it would have been a retail use, and we wouldn't have had any, there wouldn't have been anything to do. So I think that it is actually fortunate that the space is going to be used and occupied and unavailable for a retail space in the morning, and that's a positive thing. And I agree that I think that entire west side kind of mixed residential commercial use should have a holistic plan to it with respect to parking and traffic, and that the kind of how everything, even sidewalks, how everything flows in that area. But I think in this particular instance, it's a relatively minor shift that's putting it before us, and kind of the best use in some ways.
So we've had discussion about two changes, one just clarifying under item 2 on the resolution, whereas number 2 clarifying the times and days, just for clarity, and then modification to whereas number 6.
And redacting number 9.
And redacting number 9.
You should get rid of the exercise, walk and bike to the exercise class at the end of number 8, because they're walking and biking to the retail store.
Good.
Just put a period after the word bike.
We'll change it to wine bar.
I would just end it at bike.
Okay,
it's still
great.
almost a complete sentence.
Or to the space.
Got it.
Okay, so we have a few amendments. I think we've heard some of the concerns, and I think we've had discussion on those concerns, and the numbering on all of these, just those number formats are always problematic, but the second batch of whereases, sorry, is 4 to 5, not 4 to 10. Is there a motion for this resolution?
I'll make a motion to approve I'll make a motion to approve application 1434 at 1599 Sir Francis Drake Boulevard with the, oh Lord, I turned my page, with the amendments on whereas number 2, the addition on whereas number 6, whereas number 8, the redaction of whereas number 9, and then the change of 10 to 5 on the third page.
And just to make sure you've got all those, the wording changes. Okay. Is there a second?
Second. Oh.
Lots of seconds. Third. Which one? You got Lamont. You can choose. All right. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. There is a 10-day appeal period. You take it to the town hall, $500 fee to be filed within 10 calendar days. And I think we will continue having parking dialogue, and if there's any issues with the parking lot, keep talking with staff. Thank you. Thank you. We should retrieve Commissioner Carline. I know she is out. So we're going to keep on moving to item 6 on tonight's agenda, 2001 Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, application 14-35. Is she coming? Okay. Let's give her a minute. All right.
As you all know, this site has been vacant for some time now, and the owner has had a number of potential buyers and or renters express interest in using the site for some type of food service businesses. So in order to provide a certain level of certainty to prospective buyers or tenants, he is coming through the process to make some changes to the property and to the building that will lend itself to use as a food service. He is proposing to make the following changes. He's going to demolish the gas station canopy and remove the fuel pumps and islands. He will remove the car repair bay doors and replace them with 3 large windows and block veneer to match the existing building facade. He's planning to install cloth awnings over the windows and over the front entrance doors. He's going to install 2 decorative metal trellis structures affixed to the building facade to the east and west of the windows on the north side of the building, and they will be planted with some species of vine. It's going to repair the roof and paint any new siding a tan color to match the existing, and then repair the trim of the roof and paint it tan to match the existing. No, the roof's gonna match the siding. I wasn't quite clear on that. You're not doing anything to the roof? You're going to just fix the broken? Okay, well, I wasn't sure. All right. Anyway, so the design changes that they're proposing comply with the design review criteria set forth in your design review ordinance. They're also requesting approval for a sign program, which includes a sign on the building and a monument sign. The sign on the building complies with the sign ordinance. The monument sign requires an exception to the sign ordinance regulations. And in order to approve an exception, you have to be able to make one of 4 findings. Staff feels that the substantial setback that the building maintains from Sir Francis Drake Boulevard is a circumstance that does warrant the approval of a monument sign at this location. We did find when we went throughout the vicinity, though, that some of the buildings in the neighborhood use wood signs, and we don't really feel that that glass with the white background and non-raised green lettering really fits in with the type of sign you see in that area. So it would be nice to see some kind of articulation for the sign lettering and perhaps the sign out of wood. But anyway, we're recommending approval of the project based on the findings and subject to the conditions contained in the staff report.
Mr. Chair, may I add? As was pointed out in the staff report, we had our traffic engineer peer review the original site plan in light of the original traffic impact study was performed on the prior application. And it was quite a wonderful thing because our traffic engineer went the extra step and made some recommendations on how to make the interior parking area function more efficiently and avoid any backing up friction of the western spaces into the new sidewalk along Sir Francis Drake. And to our delight, the applicant was more than receptive to those changes, and on top of your plan set has a revised site plan showing those changes from two curb cuts and in and out to a single curb cut in and out, which made it a lot more efficient parking situation. And also, I'd like to punch out, in addition to that cooperation from the applicant and this designer, this plan, as opposed to the previous iterations a while back, does not utilize the Bank Street right-of-way whatsoever. Thank you.
Thanks. Are there questions for staff? Go ahead.
Given that this was a brownfield site, for it to be used in any kind of food retail, is there any additional remediation, or it's up to where it needs to be?
Well, and we'll all be glad to see that gravel area recovered soon.
So it sounds like the pavement addresses it. They're not going to have any above ground treatment ongoing. Okay.
So what I was understanding that we're approving is the sign and the roofing, those kinds of things, but there's also changes to the asphalt and the parking spaces and all of those kind of stuff, but we're not approving those with this, or are we approving them?
Yes.
They're approving all of this, everything. It's just that those don't require any variances or
No, they're
anything.
complying with the number that are required based on the square footage of the commercial space. And one of the findings in the design review is that the circulation, that however they're laying out the site, it doesn't create any pedestrian or traffic hazards. And so they've addressed the traffic engineer's concern, which was the backing out over the sidewalk and into Sir Francis Drake. They've eliminated the need to do that, so.
And then, is there any language, or what is our perspective on granting a design with the Bank Street right-of-way going through it, and what that says or doesn't say with respect to the town's future rights?
They've pulled all their improvements. They're not using the Bank Street right-of-way any longer. They're reconfiguring the parking lot, and none of their improvements will be in the right-of-way anymore.
Thank you.
So, with the last time this property came before us, there was a dialogue, and I think in the end we ended up, at least the commission ended up approving something that had actually access off of Broadway. So I just wanted to follow up and find out if, I know it went forward and it wasn't approved by the town council, but was there any discussion or dialogue with respect to the Broadway access, or they didn't get past the name on the wall?
No, because it's a totally different use, and without the use of the easement, we have full use of the easement now, and then the single entrance and exit off of Sir Francis Drake just really sort of tightened up the use of this site, and feeds off Sir Francis Drake, if you will. And then again, it's up to the town's wishes whether we blow through Bank Street. It's totally now up to us on the disposition of Bank Street and going forward.
So I understand that. So then I guess the next question would be, their design eliminates the Bank Street. They're going to have a curb and all of that. Who's going to develop or redevelop whatever Bank Street is? Because right now it's a parking lot with curbs.
Right. That would be our responsibility.
And so is the town then, I understand there's no there may be a long-term plan, but even in the short term, would it be planted, open space? I see that there's
I can tell you that
a crosswalk.
The Public Works Director, who's also the town administrator, is looking at that area for possibly some kind of bike parking. He has some grant money, so he knows that space is going to become available and is trying to determine what to do with it. If you're worried about it just it's, you know.
Because what I was looking at is like the pedestrian access, so, you know, because, yes, there's vehicle access off of Sir Francis Drake, but
Well, I think
pedestrians would cross from the existing crosswalk, and then they'd kind of cross this Bank Street easement, but if it's going to be improved, it'll be fine. I understand. I just wanted to understand.
Yeah, and if you look,
because they're going to clear everything off, and then it's going to be sort of sitting there.
A large sidewalk. You have a large sidewalk.
A gateway, yes. And then the other question I have is on, we have site plan 1, and then we have the big plan that's site plan 1. And they have totally different entryways.
Yeah,
so is it a single entrance now, or is it going to be the double?
We asked them in short order to revise the site plan reflecting what the traffic engineer, Mr. Parisi, had recommended. So that's what they did. They added the SketchUp. They showed you where they started, and then they showed you where they ended up. And it's,
so what's being proposed is the
smaller.
Correct. Correct. And again, you know, if they were to try to put an entrance off of Broadway and now their reduced footprint, if you will, they'd lose parking, they wouldn't be compliant.
Right. No, and I wasn't promoting, I just want to know if there was discussion that people said, no way, or they didn't even get to that.
No, we didn't get to
Then the other question is, I know there's no sidewalk along Broadway, kind of on the back side.
Right.
There's a sidewalk along Sir Francis Drake. Was there, again, there's no space there on the private property, but is there any, you determined that it was
No, they
not
determined
necessary?
that there was no room for a sidewalk there. That was discussed at the council, because John Reed really wanted to see some kind of a sidewalk in that area.
So the crossing would really be crossing the existing crosswalk and using the opposite side of the road. Okay. Thanks. Go ahead.
So as I recall in our discussions about the traffic impact study originally, there was some stipulation, I didn't go through it this time, about a no left turn heading west.
It's
Is
still
that
in there.
still in place?
Yes.
Okay.
And of course, we don't have the tanker problem on this one.
I don't know, those yogurt delivery might, you know, eventually get so popular that come in tankers. All right.
We're very happy to be at this stage so we can get this piece of property back up and running. The owner applicant has been very patient in working with the city.
Do we have any more questions, or are we ready? Okay. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
I wanted to ask, is there a way we can reduce the number of parking spaces required on the site? What would be the process to allow for a possibility of that?
You would have, we would have to notice it for a parking variance and have another meeting and make findings to decrease the parking.
What would be the motivation?
I don't know, that's the part I'm struggling with this application. I just had a thought that because it's in the city village center area, to make it more in line, having it with the parking makes it look more, you know, like the highway commercial that we eventually want to get rid of. So it's probably maybe premature on this application, but it seemed like it might be something. I wanted to see if there was a possibility.
You know, unfortunately, this is sort of an adaptive reuse situation. You've got an existing highway commercial structure. So, you know, in a perfect world, yeah, if he's doing something complementary to the town's historic character starting over. Someday, maybe as the town fills in with the vision that's been provided by you all, with going, healing the scars of the highway commercial bookends towards more central commercial, pedestrian-oriented, old urban scale. Someday, if that comes to fruition, I'm sure this site will be worth even more money than it is right now. And somebody will come along when we have a managed parking situation, and we can replace the parking, hopefully, on this site with a building. And then that's when the economic, the value capture would happen. I agree with you, removing the parking and adding more building in the long term be good, But we're hard pressed right now for a managed parking approach.
And I would just point one more thing out, and I think, we've never there's been a lot of discussion about Bank Street and that Bank Street easement and how it's used. But if it's used as an actual road corridor, this really wouldn't be a very ideal. It's going to be a really tough pedestrian kind of a spot. So I think even though now with the redwood trees and the parking spot and this big wide sidewalk, it might look kind of like a low intensity sort of, wow, I could see a picnic table, sort of like we saw with Java Hut. If this becomes any sort of a corridor that's being used for a lot of vehicle traffic, it could be kind of the opposite.
And unfortunately, the backside of this building just is right up against almost against the curb line on Broadway there, so it's a hard edge. The vine will help. I think it'll sort of disappear the building, and that's when the pedestrian friendliness on that side of Broadway disappears anyway. So in the long run, I hear you. I see your vision in the long run. In the short run, we've got a situation where this applicant has spent a lot of time and money and effort to do something that did not come to fruition. We're very grateful from the staff standpoint that he has been cooperative in trying to find a way to put this to good use and soften its looks and work with the town to create some economic vitality on this project. That's not our purview here necessarily, except that we're sensitive to business owners and, time is money. So it'd be good to get this back. It's an eyesore now, so it's a step in the right direction, in our opinion.
So one other question I have on this sign, because I think if this really is an exploratory, I'm understanding this is an exploratory, looking at the footprint and all of that, and of all the things, it seems that the sign is the last thing, or the most flexible, and I would almost wonder if it might be better instead of, I think what's being proposed makes sense, but maybe just the sign would have to come back if it's not in compliance. Right now, I don't feel like, this isn't sounding like this is exactly what it's going to be. This is an exploratory, this is getting a permit.
You could approve the monument location and the design of the monument and just have the sign subject to, the sign face itself subject to staff review if you wanted to, because he doesn't even know what the tenant's going to be yet.
And we kicked this around quite a bit. And
we didn't agree.
We may not totally have the same mindset on that, which is good, because that's what growth is about, is considering, sharing each other's opinion. I'm of the opinion, I think Linda's made some good suggestions about the character of the sign material. I think the plexiglass back is something I think you should just discuss. And perhaps you can leave it to the staff at the staff level. Where I was going in my mind was, regardless of where you land on the materials of the sign, it seems to me that you could approve a monument sign in its scale, and you could approve the lettering size and font and even color if you want, and then we just simply change what is spelled with that lettering depending on which business goes in to create some flexibility and get this done now. If there's any great change to the monument, to whatever you approve, I think then it would have to come back in, yeah.
But see, my problem is until you know the business name, you don't know whether the font is going to fit into the sign face. It seems to me, well, okay, I think.
So.
I think when the business.
Clearly, you want us to solve this for you. So.
No. We're leaving it for you for fun.
I'm sure we can take it on, but it does give me pause to say we'd leave it to staff, because then who knows what kind of debate you might have.
If you could approve the size and material of the monument sign, and where the font will eventually be, regardless of the wording, and then let us approve the wording, that would be helpful.
I mean, I find that most businesses come up with a tasteful sign anyway, and he's just trying to get a basic approval so he can draw a tenant. I think most of the businesses are going to want something different than what's shown, but.
Okay.
But if we approve something and then the tenant wants something different, they can come back and
but
then
the location and the size would be approved, so they wouldn't have to come back to you unless they wanted to make the sign bigger.
Location, material, and location, size, material, and font.
Okay. Is there a Fairfax font? Now I'm going to open it up. So, sorry you got up, but now we're ready for the applicant. Sorry. having too much fun with sign and font discussions.
Hi, I'm Ron Jacobs with PM Design Group, and we're the architects on the project. I was hoping doing the blown up color rendering was going to show a little better than the small one, but it didn't. So we put together a color sample board that's a little bit more accurate. So also on the sign, we're flexible to change it to a wood sign. That's not an issue. I think at this point, I just want to open it up for questions.
Anybody have questions? I think you answered one of the bigger ones that we would have, which is the sign. So you're okay with what's the wood sign recommendation?
Yeah, I think it would fit well with the character of the town.
Okay.
Do you have an opinion to add on the font debate?
Once we get a tenant, maybe, yeah.
The note says sign is externally illuminated, so how is lighting proposed on the sign?
I believe on the site plan, there's a couple of ground-mounted lights, I believe, that are...
It's not back illuminated.
Okay, and I think that's one of the fears. If it's a plexiglass, it could easily be converted, and I think that would be another reason why we wouldn't want to approve that.
So with the colors, I can't recall what the existing roof color is. Is that what's shown here? Or is it?
Right now it's kind of weathered wood shingling, and we're proposing just to change it out to new wood shingling.
All right. Any other questions, or we're good? I think we're good. If we have any more, we'll let you know. I'm not seeing anyone else here that would speak to this. All right. So we'll close the public comment, bring it back to the commission. Anyone want to start?
I think it's a great reuse of the space that sat unused for a very long time. I think keeping the parking spaces right now is a great idea. The downtown hub after kids get out of school at 3 o'clock, we're at a premium for parking. The arcade is often filled and the streets are filled, and if this becomes a retail food establishment, to have that parking in place. I mean, we see the frozen yogurt in the event that it were to be something like that. Is just popular, and to get those spaces in for elementary school through high school kids. I would hate to go from already having space to having less and just taking the footprint away for the sake of the footprint and putting planters there, I think would do a disservice to our town at this point. I agree that should we develop that space later on in a different capacity, but I like the use, I like the design.
Okay. Anyone else?
Where is the font articulation in the conditions? Where does that show up if I was going to look
Because
specifically?
staff couldn't agree, I just threw it out there for discussion, hoping that the commission might take up, and add it and make it a little clearer.
But it sounds like what we would then need to do is make a condition 18. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
With giving us some discretion.
Right.
The director.
giving the director all the power, no.
But it seems like we
Well,
would,
my thought was just when a business gets chosen, it would just come through staff to make sure that they don't do anything outlandish, you know?
but it sounds like what you're.
Where is it articulated, the materials and that kind of
It's not.
stuff? Or is it,
It's
it's
not.
page 5?
Oh, is it?
That's the discussion, that's the description of what was requested, and then
So if you want to say,
page 6 talks
it sounds
about-
like they've agreed to make the
4 and
sign
5.
face wood, so you just want to add a condition that the sign face shall be wood, and that the final sign copy will be subject to staff review and approval.
So the sign faces wood.
Subject to the planning director's approval.
Sign faces wood, externally lit.
Right.
Subject matter,
The sign copy
sign copy.
will be subject to the planning director's review and approval.
Specifics on the size?
Should be
It's articulated on the first page of the original set.
the size.
So
so-
basically what changes, instead of plexiglass material, it should say
Changes to
wood
wood.
material on the top part of the sign.
Right. So what I'm hearing is that we need to basically make a condition 18 that says so essentially we're approving it without any language, but then by adding condition 18, we're approving the square footage, the height, and condition 18 saying the sign face would be made of wood and externally lit, and the sign copy would be subject to review and approval by the town planning director, and that gets at the content. And look, they're both happy. It sounds like we might have compromise here. Anything else? Is there a motion? Nobody's ready to make a motion?
I'll make a motion
All right.
to approve. Where is it? Demolition, oh, sorry, there we go. Application, design review and sign permit application number 1435 with the condition as stated. Number 18. Sign, okay, the sign copy, okay, to planning design or planning director approval. Will be wood and not plexiglass.
Okay, we're all mumbling. Nobody on TV can hear us right now. But what's being proposed is that there would be a new, approved with condition 18, and I'll take liberty, the sign face would be wood and externally lit, and the sign copy would be subject to town planning director review and approval. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. This too is subject to appeal to the town council. $500 within 10 days. Thank you. Do we need a short break? Okay, we're going to take a short break and we'll be back in 5 minutes. It's 9 o'clock right now. So 5-minute break. We're going to get ourselves back and going here in 1 minute. Okay, we ready to go?
Where are we? Okay, so.
Formula business.
Yeah, so I know that the council in repealing ordinance 778 wanted to take a fresh start with implementing the policies in the general plan and housing element. So where they had originally folded all the highway commercial into central commercial, they took a step back and
Turn that, the end mic is on. Yeah. No, it's not? It looked like it was. I don't know why it's not.
okay. So we're technically still in the, we still have a highway commercial, and we've had two town hall forums on the general plan and housing element. The first one was a more global review of the strategies within the housing element to meet our regional housing needs allocation. Hello? Okay, I'll give this a shot. So I know it's a little redundant, but they want us to, the council directed us to bring this down to you to tighten the language in the central commercial. As you know, the formula retail restrictions exist in the central commercial zoning section of the code, section of the zoning ordinance. It does not apply, it's not in the highway commercial. And there was a lot of discussion over the course of several months about the history of the town introducing and adopting a formula retail business restrictive covenant. And a lot of people in the public that were on the council and the planning commission at the time actually thought that it was always intended to be in both the highway commercial and the central commercial. So here we are. We still have a highway commercial. We still have a central commercial. We will be having another forum in the near future on the strategy within the housing element to combine, and the land use element and the circulation element, to combine, to fold the highway commercial into the central commercial, to bring those areas of town, the bookends of town, into the more historic scale and pedestrian-oriented aspect of our village, of the village. So in the meantime, while we're going through this thorough sort of fresh start on implementing the housing element, it came to our attention through a town attorney that the actual language in the central commercial section of the zoning ordinance was antiquated and needed quickly to be revised. And it was also the determination of the council, since we currently still have a highway commercial, that we should adopt as soon as possible those same restrictions that needed updating in the central commercial within the highway commercial. So what you have before you tonight is that language being recommended for updating in the central commercial, and that is, we gave you late, I believe, after the staff packet went out, a red line version, so you could see exactly where those changes were made in the existing language within the CC, the central commercial. And then you also have an updated code ordinance section for the highway commercial, and that's not a red line version, it's simply adding that whole similar section that you see updated in the central commercial. So it's just a whole new section. It would be redundant to have it red line. Yes.
So I understand the concerns and why these are raised, and based on the way it's been presented as an emergency, why wouldn't it be a moratorium? Why are we amending the town code if it's just a temporary thing as we go through a longer term process? Wouldn't it be easier to do a moratorium for a year? It would show intent to actually proceed with complying with the housing element and the other elements of the general plan. So was there discussion about a moratorium versus an ordinance to change the town code?
I don't think there was a discussion on that. And as you know, the language, both that existed before this recommended language and now the recommended language, doesn't absolutely restrict any formula retail. It gives a little wiggle room if those applicants jump through certain hoops to bring it into the character of what could possibly be approved. So it's not a blanket restriction, it's just a very narrow window to land a business like that. In fact, the Daily Methods is an example where it was like, just barely meeting the qualifications as a formula retail or a formula business, and they were able to adjust their model, their business model, to accommodate the revisions or the provisions within the restrictive language.
Isn't the staff report says there is a moratorium on right now, though, and it's a 10-month moratorium.
Excuse me, I beg your pardon. Yes, there is a moratorium on right now, and it expires either at the adoption of this updated language or 10 months, 10 and a half months, or 10 months, 5 days or something from its creation. Forgive me, I'm having a lapse of memory here.
So
10
there's,
months and 15 days. There is a moratorium
there
on
is
it
a
right now.
moratorium that would take us through about like August-ish
Right,
of next,
right.
August of 2015.
Right.
So it does give us that time frame for all these other things.
Right,
to take
right. And you know, your role here is an advisory role to the council. You can recommend, you know, any changes, you can recommend putting it off, and we will take it up to the council.
So, again, I'm just trying to understand it. If this is the most urgent thing for us to be addressing, which is why it's come to us, I think from the direction of the town council, I'm just confused why we would, if there is a moratorium that prevents this exact thing from happening. To me, this shows that there's no intent to make changes to the Central Highway District. That's the way I interpret it, if there's a moratorium for the next, until August of next year. I'm just asking the question.
I think I think you're asking a very interesting question, which is a little bit outside what's before you tonight. I can't fortune tell what will happen as we go through this process. As you know, the findings in repealing 778 that were contained within 780 were strengthened in the 11th hour to express support for the general plan and the housing element. And the process, if you go back and you read the staff reports and you listen to the discussion, it has articulated a so-called fresh start in adopting the zoning changes in the map, the zoning map, and also paralleling at the same time that each sort of major chunk of the strategy of the housing element, the planned development district, zone changes, properties that would become planned development district, as well as the central highway converting to, commercial highway commercial to central commercial. That process, you know, is sequential. And along with the language within the planned development district changes and the language in terms of what the final look of the central commercial zoning ordinance language would look like remains to be seen. Remember, we were talking about eliminating the categories of uses and doing a more current way of qualifying what sort of uses go in. So I hope, it's hard to answer that. I think right now, you know, we have a majority of the council that repealed the zoning map that had been previously adopted and wants to take this more deliberative step-by-step approach. And we are, you know, following the direction that is given us by the town council as staff to do that. So that's where we are. And again, the findings in the repeal of 778, which was 780, reiterated the support for the general plan and the housing element. I understand where you're coming from. I can see how this is counterintuitive. Why don't we just get on with the process, particularly since there's a moratorium that lasts till August. But again, we've been directed to bring this down to you, which is what the code prescribes, and here we are.
So, and I understand that, you know, it seems like the logical next steps based upon the discussions that we've had or are tied to what happened Wednesday before last. So under any scenario, that anything coming out of that meeting couldn't have come to us this meeting anyways. I think we've asked before, and I think the question that we've wondered is, well, what is the critical path? How can we help accommodate the critical path to get to that end point? And my first reaction to this is this isn't part of the critical path. It seems like it's a solution to something that's not right now a problem. And, you know, so why is this the number one priority for us to be addressing this month, other than it wouldn't have been our number one priority had the town meeting regarding 10 Olima and the other site had been held 2 weeks earlier, and we would, I assume, be addressing maybe some ideas out of those forums.
I'm not in a position to answer that question, unfortunately.
This was directed, you were directed just like we're being asked.
Right.
Got it.
Right. But I will offer this up, though, that during the many heated discussions and the several hearings we had on the repeal of 778, there were a lot of spirited exchanges, shall we say, from some of the folks that had been around on the council and the planning commission back then that were quite upset when they discovered that this restriction didn't exist in the highway commercial already. That it was their recollection that it was supposed to be, and that somehow the ball was dropped way back years ago when this was added. And so I think I would venture to guess that perhaps those members of the council that decided to move this forward in advance of getting rid of the highway commercial were perhaps, sensitive to those claims and just wanted to make a statement to the greater public while we work our way back through this adoption of the zoning map with amendments to the language within the zoning ordinance in a very deliberative fashion, that we, get this done pronto. I mean, that's my sense of it anyway.
And I think that's fair. The other question I have is, I don't know if it's appropriate now, but I think it might help us as a group understand from your perspective, what is the critical path? And I know that that's not exactly what is in front of us, but I think it would help us understand the context that we're being asked to look at this.
Well,
I don't think I'm out of order just to try to get an understanding of critical path.
I think in the context of, I think we can talk about it. As you know, we've had 2 town sponsored forums on the housing element, general plan house and the housing element. And the first was more global. It was July 12th. And then Wednesday before last, we focused on 2 of the targeted plan development district sites, the 2 out of the 3. There's the church, Tenalima, and School Street Plaza. And the church is sort of on auto drive at this point. We're expecting them to come in with a general request for a general plan amendment, a tentative parcel map, and a project plan to go through design review hopefully in the first part of the year. So that left the 2 other targeted plan development district sites, the Tenalima and the School Street Plaza, which is what we discussed Wednesday before last in this room with about 60, 70 people here. And there was about over 200 in the first forum, and we were down to about 60 or 70. And at the end of the second forum, week before last, the mayor said that, stay tuned. We are going to be having a couple more coming. So we did take forward the request from Commissioner Hamilton at the last meeting to come back with a critical path of adopting things. And we asked, and we were, told that that's not the direction of council at this time to put a timeline on what's going on. They want to take it sequentially. And so, for example, we'll be going back, town manager will be going back to the town council with some summary of the most recent forum, like he did after the first forum. And then he'll get further direction from the council with regards to the disposition of School Street Plaza and Tenalima. And hopefully at that time, he'll also get direction with regards to scheduling the next forum, which I would presume would be looking at highway commercial, folding all the commercial highway into central commercial, rezoning it to central commercial again. And during that forum, of course, we'll be laying out to the public the potential modifications to the language in the zoning ordinance that would parallel with those map changes. And we've also reached out and, I think during the whole kerfuffle over 778, I spoke at the chamber because they're very interested, being the merchants in the downtown. And so we're trying to be very deliberate and help people understand what was the goal and the intent. And of course, the big change from the housing element standpoint in going to central commercial is allows the housing on the second floor by right without having to get a conditional use permit. So that's the big demarcation and the big change. And again, we plan on recommending revised language within the central commercial after that forum, and we hear from the public. But we just don't have a time frame at this moment. We're not in a position to offer one up because of the way the council has decided to go through the process step by step.
And I want you to know that I absolutely respect the work that you've done and sort of I understand that there's a difficult position here, but I think it's important that my question is this, so the critical path and sort of what the next steps are, you're saying that the town doesn't have a position and they're waiting for town council to provide that? Or they provided it and the town council hasn't adopted a critical path?
We've not been asked by council to provide a timeline.
So
we've been directed actually not to, they want to take it one step at a time.
And the council has asked the town to take it one step at a time.
The staff.
What I'm getting at is that some of the questions we have, and like I said, I fully respect you. I think it's important for the town manager to be able to answer some of these questions. If the planning commission has questions, we're being asked to move some of these items along from the perspective of the town council. I think I understand that it's your role to convey that, but I think we're getting to the point of needing to have those answers directly. And I think it shows, it is a bit of a problem if this planning commission isn't provided the opportunity to have that dialogue with the town manager.
Well, I would recommend we agendize this, and I'm sure the town manager would be glad to come and chat and talk about this.
I think that's kind of an open question that we've been asking a few times. So it's not that we haven't asked for it to be agendized. It's just a matter of how do we get there.
Okay, well, I'll take this back and discuss it tomorrow and see if we can get it agendized and have him here to discuss this with you.
Okay, we have more questions.
Yeah, I think that the distinction here that I'm hearing a miss on is that a critical path isn't necessarily a timeline. And so it may take whatever time it takes, but a critical path is like a list of priorities. And so to be presented with the formula business for CC when there are bigger fish to fry right now, it just seems like this fresh start, and I'm going to continue to put a quote on fresh, because we've done this. There's nothing fresh about it. This piecemealing of zoning, in my opinion, is frankly a waste of staff time, a waste of hardworking volunteers' time, to send us an article that's probably been reviewed by the town attorney. That was expensive too. I mean, this is, I'm sorry to rant because I know you've worked really hard in trying to keep the peace here, but to ask for a critical path means let's set some priorities and let's look at what's important, and let's be efficient about it. We're a small town with limited resources, and to piecemeal this process is, okay, I'll say it, it's absurd. So in case you didn't know where I stood on this before, I'm happy to look at the work that you've done, and I'm happy to look at formula business going into CC, but to have CC and CH existing with the same ordinance, it's like, let's just do this. Let's just put CC and CH together and
so can I
reasonable.
Can I speak to two things? First of all, with terms of critical path versus a timeline, I think the critical path sort of is happening in the sense that, again, the first form was on the overview. The second one was on the targeted, 2 of the 3 targeted plan development district sites, and I'm under the impression that the next one will be on the very issue of CH to CC, the highway commercial converting to central commercial. So I think in terms of that critical path, we're sort of 3/4 of the way through it, and there's just all that's left is a public domain.
So I guess my question is the critical path items only going to be dealt with in town forum, town meetings, town hall meetings, in that sense? And so do we have not necessarily when, but a what? And so you've answered the what a little bit tonight. That's very helpful. Thank you. But I guess then why are we even going through this process?
I hear where you're coming from.
And I understand why you're directed, and I'm slightly rhetorical for you.
Yeah. But I think all your points are well taken. I'm between a rock and a hard spot here. I mean, it's counterintuitive, and your role as the planning commissioners, as a body, is in many ways different than the role of the elected officials who actually set the policy. And politics are involved with setting the policy, okay? And obviously that's what's, the elephant in the room here is the politics behind the policy. And having said that, we take our direction from the council. And yet the code prescribes these things have to go through you at some point as an advisory body to the council, but the council sets the policy. So for example, tonight you'll be making recommendations, if you make any recommendations, to the council. And you can make what recommendations you like. You don't have to act on this tonight. You can make changes. You can do what you want, but it had to stop here for you. And then the next stop is the council that sets the policy. Let me just offer one little thing up that might give you a little comfort, and that is, it turns out that, according to our town attorney, that the language that exists in the CC, and presumably if we end up converting the CH to CC, will be the same language for those parcels as well, is antiquated and problematic. It's very problematic if someone was to come in right now in the CC. So in the sense that we are accomplishing something to protect the town, there is something being accomplished tonight. And whether or not the attorney was doing this for just all these parcels as CC or as CH and CC, the exercise is not lost. At some point, we would have been spending the staff time or the attorney time to amend whatever section of the code you want to call it that contains the formula of business respect. So it's not wasted. I understand it's counterintuitive. I understand it's frustrating. But again, at this moment, you're in an advisory role. It's stopped here. It's going back to council. You can make any recommendations you want. You can take action. You can not take action. You can do whatever you like.
So it seems to me that there's two concepts or issues at hand that we're looking at here. One is improving the language of the formula business restrictions, and one is where does that improvement go? And so I agree with you, and I think, and I was actually just going to segue into that as well, is I think that there's a whole lot of work that's been done for this item tonight that is totally recyclable and great work, and in reading through it is a great improvement, both for the formula business language that needed to be improved. The other area that I thought was really well written and was is going to be helpful regardless of where we go was the ordinance language itself. The 782 ordinance languages and all of the whereases, I think, did an excellent job of pulling out the salient, God, it's echoing in here, pulling out the salient pieces of our town, of our general plan concept with respect to the entire town center planning area, which currently encompasses both the CC and the CH. And I think it did a really good job of pulling out a lot of the phrases around the village-like character, the strategies and policies that provide specific guidance to enhance a sense of place and the quality of life, articulating that the pedestrian and the mix of uses. There's a lot of really, really good language in all of the whereases, and it was very compelling language. And I found it actually very compelling language to be used. It was very compelling in why we're, not only just the formula business, which I think it well articulated, but it also was very compelling language with respect to why the general plan in multiple places articulated the desire to convert CH to CC, that it wasn't just housing, it was land use, it was conservation, it was transit orientation, it was design. There's a number of sections in a number of places around setting design standards for creating a holistic concept of our downtown that reaches beyond the current downtown. And I think that this ordinance language in the whereas places really did a great job of moving us in that direction. And I would imagine that a lot of these will be used down the line at some point in that larger discussion. I think what we're talking about, the second part of it is, besides the formula business language, is the what is the therefore recommendation that we have? What we have before us is and therefore add the formula business new language into the CH zone. And what we're bringing up here is perhaps the therefore is, and therefore rezone CH to CC. And then it's all incorporated in it. And so those are a couple of different options and ways to go. And I think I agree with the confusion around the critical path. And what I'm seeing is it's unfolding as it's unfolding. And not a path means that there's looking into the future. You see a path. It's not at every moment everything is possible, that there's something laid out for the future. And I think that's what we've been asking for, is not that it's going to happen or not going to happen. We've seen it happening, but what is going to happen next? We don't know what that path looks like. And does that path mean going this way with formula business and CH, this way with CC to CH, or how you prioritize? So that's so I think there's a couple of things, and I do think that a lot of this is very good and will be time well spent, regardless of where we go. I agree that one of the issues I have in terms of making recommendations for languages is that when you start putting duplicative parallel languages in multiple places in the town code, you open yourself up for possible errors when things get changed in one place but they don't get changed in another, or they're not exactly the same. For example, even in the example that we were given, I noticed that where was it? There's one place where this actually said CC when it meant to say CH. Line 79. So that's just like a right off the bat example of a cut and paste potential error when you're repeating things in multiple places.
I'm glad you caught it, because that's why we're here.
And so I think, from that perspective, again, the less duplicative repetition of the same stuff, in my mind, I think it is better legislative language to say it once and point to it rather than say it in multiple places. And I think that was part of the intent, too, from a general conceptual perspective, is the entire downtown area is meant to be kind of an integrated, unified thing, not that we're patching it together. So I agree with that perspective. And I would think that we could give the town council perhaps a couple of options and say that we generally support the amending of the language in the formula business language that's been presented to us, which I support, but that we also think that they should consider holding off on doing this little piece until they have the conversation, at least until they have the conversation. The other thing that I did that I was going to...
I'm sorry, which conversation?
The forum on the CH to CC, that's a community conversation that would encompass this formula business concept, but would also make clear how the formula business ordinance is a piece of a larger concept of a town village plan that extends beyond our current town center. So I also, in trying to figure out what's different between CH and CC, what's the problem, is our parking different, what's the difference? I went and downloaded off of our town website. If anybody's looking, you can do this. If you go to the town website and you go to the town code, there's a great tool, American Legal Publishing tool, that lets you download in a Word format all of our entire town code. So I downloaded the CH and the CC, stuck it in Word, merged the two documents, and got a red line that I found very helpful, and I made copies for other folks to look at.
So can I jump in here for a second? Now we are starting to get off the reservation on what this conversation's about tonight.
Okay.
I think we took a little latitude already to get off track here. So I think that if you can just bring this back to, the language that's been provided to you and its applicability in these two existing zones. That's really what we're here tonight about. And your exercise that we got a copy of, that would actually be perhaps helpful at the next forum to show people what that is about, but it's not what we're discussing tonight.
So what I would like to suggest is that we actually agendize, and maybe we agendize it at least right now, is I think what we've heard based on this discussion, and I promise we'll get back to this, is a discussion inviting the town manager just to talk about critical path, not timeline, but critical path in terms of milestones. And then a second item for discussion, and maybe it'll evolve if there's forums, but is really a discussion around CHCC. I think one of the things that the Planning Commission hasn't done, and it's certainly in the purview of the Planning Commission, is to propose, essentially make recommendations to, you don't have to wait to be requested to make a change to the ordinance, but actually can propose changes to the ordinance. And so I'd like to at least explore that idea of agendizing a discussion around that. Not to say that if there's a town forum that's going to be CHCC, then that's one thing, but I think, we keep talking about getting our list of items that we want to talk, and there's no reason why we couldn't agendize that as a proposed ordinance. But I don't want to get too far down that road. I think we, at least at the discussion stage, should at least be talking about it. But I do want to get this back to what you were talking about is...
Briefly, okay. Though, I just think if we move forward with having Mr. Toy come to sort of discuss this in sort of a discussion period, that would help. I would caution you about, since there is this path laid out and we're moving through it, I would caution to get out and not getting out in front of the council on it,
And I fully understand that, but I think based on the discussion tonight, we've expressed that we don't feel that the path has been fully laid out, and that is part of the reason that we're grilling you instead of...
Then I would be really glad to have the town manager here.
Anyways, okay, getting back to what is presented to us tonight, I think I appreciate what Commissioner Hamilton had to say about the information that, while we may disagree about the why and that it's not everything, it certainly does raise the bar in terms of commitment and integrating a lot of these things. The resolution is our resolution, and we're recommending an ordinance which eventually becomes the town council's ordinance. We can say, and we can include whereases that we feel are important in a resolution, that as we recommend an ordinance moving forward, we can add some of the items that we've talked about or the concerns we've raised. I don't know, but I would like to entertain whether we could include a whereas even in the ordinance. But based on the discussion, and it's not as well laid out as somebody else might do up here, but it seems to me that based on what we've been discussing, there could be an additional whereas in the resolution 1413 that says the Planning Commission, and I think we can say it, has fully endorsed the conversion of CH to CC and does not intend this action to slow down the impetus for the town to fully adopt the general plan item. And that, at least, it expresses sort of the discussion that we've been having. I don't know if we could also include that in the ordinance. The town council could always take it out.
It's draft language in the ordinance. You can make recommendations, yeah. By the way, I forgot to mention that please disregard the number on the ordinance. That number is going to change, so just consider it a blank number.
14-X.
No, the resolution's right, the ordinance number.
The ordinance number,
yeah,
not 782.
Yeah,
got it.
That's blank in the report and on the ordinance.
Okay, so because I think, as I expressed, some of the questions that we're asking, I know you're bringing forth what you were asked to bring forth, and I understand that.
And so again, I think you're headed in the right direction.
But I think we want to at least express our, it's the position of the committee, or it's not the position, but I think through whereases, at least we can express some of the discussion that we've had tonight.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I think I'm just going to chime in on the pragmatic side, that town council wants this done. There's been a lot of pressure from the community. We know where the community stands in terms of formula businesses until CH is converted to CC, and we don't know if that will be a month or 6 months, given the pulse of the community. This is the stopgap measure. And while it's not perfect, it will get town council where they want, and I think it's the compromise to get the community feeling that they're moving in the right direction. And I agree that there's a better way to go about it, but that's going to take a while.
Well, and I would just argue that actually this is a way to make it not necessary to move forward with anything. And while we may move on this, and I'm comfortable. I think it's important that at least our desires and what we've already endorsed, if the commission were to endorse it, a whereas doesn't stop anything. It doesn't slow anything down. It essentially provides perspective.
And let me just mention, I had a conversation with Mr. Torre, manager, today about this very subject, and you should do what you feel is the right thing to do here. Okay, it's going to be the council that adopts the ordinance in its final language. It's your resolution. You can make recommended language changes to the ordinance. It's going to be their decision on the final language of the ordinance. But you should do what makes you feel comfortable as a body with where we are at this point in time. And just to be candid, staff is in a tightrope, is walking a tightrope here, and there are other things at play that are not. It's not possible to publicly discuss certain ramifications with what are going on. There's some exposure happening here that can't be discussed at this point.
Well, so you could simply provide that as saying this actually isn't part of the objectives, and if that could be presented, town council could bring that, or the town manager could bring that and say, this isn't part of the critical path. We realize this, but we are asking you to adopt this for other reasons. You don't have to describe them. It puts it in a different light, and I think that's the difficulty that I'm personally having with this, is that there's a discussion and a dialogue that there's this critical path. Obviously, there are other things going on. If it's simply presented that way, it helps with context.
If you want to delay this, and wait and have the manager come at the next meeting.
I would feel more comfortable with that, and to have some of that context information. I wholeheartedly support improving the language in the CC zone. I'm wary of this urgency issue because we've gotten in trouble before with this hurry up, we've got to do something quickly. We have a moratorium for 10 months through August. So there isn't, unless there's some other, I don't know exactly the exposure part, but we do seem to have some time, given that we have a moratorium going on, and given some of the questions that have been, that we've had. There's a couple of things that I think it would be helpful to hear from the town manager. And I think if there is a plan to have the next forum in the not too distant future on CH to CC, I think that would be really helpful context information with respect to this. There could be stuff that comes out of that forum, given that the formula business issue is a big part of the CH and the CC, that whole area. So there could be stuff that we learn about the language, about the concept in that forum that would be helpful in informing just even that part of it. So I think all of those pieces would be very helpful before moving this forward. And I'm wary of moving too quickly and words. I mean, I know how much painstaking care the town council has been putting into a lot of their ordinances and making sure that the T's and the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and to kind of reflect that perspective with our work. Again, just to make sure that we're being conscientious like that as well. I would support that process.
And I would be really happy to have the manager come and do a better job than I'm doing in fielding some of these questions, which I'm sure he can do, because he, his boss is the council and my boss is him. So I take my marching orders from the town manager, and the town manager takes his marching orders from the town council, and you're really asking questions about the town council. So it helps me if going to the horse's mouth.
I have a couple very specific questions. Okay. Can we, well, I'm happy to shift gears and do specific questions.
Well, do I hear you guys heading towards putting this off tonight?
I think we need to discuss that. I mean, it's hard to know the drivers. My concern is how it will be used. That's all.
And again,
and there may be completely different drivers. That,
I'm not in a position to respond to that.
Yep.
Your point's well taken, but I'm just not in a position to respond to that. You're getting out of my area of staffing, you guys.
So really, we're in between a rock and a hard place too, because if it's a stopgap measure that is simply a stopgap measure, and that the right broader picture actions will be taken eventually, but this is helping a contextual issue, locally now. Of course, we want to, make it easier for you to do your jobs and to make sure that the whereas language is actually being fulfilled when we adopt it. However, there's a history with these things, and we say, okay, we got what we wanted, let's just not do the rest. And I don't think that's the intent of what of the work that we've done, and of the movement toward merging the zones. So that's our rock and our hard place.
So again, it's within your purview what you want to recommend here. And I'm just thinking out loud with you here, since I'm not doing a very good job, or it's difficult for me to adequately address your concerns with where I sit and my role, you might get a better comfort level with what direction or recommendations you want to make to the town council after having the similar discussion with Mr. Toy. Because then you have the benefit of his perspective as the direct report to the council that's pushing these policies or revisiting these policies. So that might help you shape your reaction. I mean, again, going back to what's before you, you can make the recommendation or not. You can bifurcate the recommendation. You can recommend not. It's within your purview what you want to do tonight, or put it off and get the benefit of our town manager, who is a direct report to the town council that is guiding this revisit to how we hopefully get to where we thought we were going.
So I suggest that we put this off for another month.
I have a couple of questions. Sure. Okay. I have a couple of questions. If we put this on hold, how does this affect development?
There's a
yes, I know. I just want to confirm, it puts everything on hold.
It's a moratorium on any formula businesses in both zones. So a formula business cannot even get past go during the moratorium for either zone.
So it's just the formula businesses.
Just the
Everything
formula
else.
Just the formula businesses. Once the ordinance is enacted with the revised language, whether it's in one zone, two zones, then it's a prescriptive language on how, if there's any chance of a formula business landing in town, what it has to do. It's not a carte blanche no, it's saying, you have to do this, this, and this, as you see.
So I mean, in that context, then that makes your discussion about the language being improved even within CC, that right now is even problematic in CC. So,
but of course it's not applicable right now because there's a moratorium.
But it's a moratorium. But what's presented in here is both CH and CC. And so when you're saying bifurcate, one option would be just section 3, the 17100 language, and not address the 17096 language, which would be a possibility. But I think that it would actually be more, not acceptable, but I think it would, we're trying to be constructive and we're trying to be respectful, but we also have questions. And I guess that's what I'm getting to is, if there's a critical path, then I think it's important that the planning commission is included with whatever level of representation the town should be providing to explain. If it's not going to be explained to us and we have questions, then what is this? And I know there's nobody in the seats right now, but this is where some of these questions should be asked and answered, not waiting until it gets to the town council and it's political. I agree that the town council sets policy, but there's a lot of policy that happens outside of the political context, and that's really the body that's what we're charged to do. And so whether it's a level of respect, however we want to characterize it, I think if putting this, continuing it until next meeting so that we can have an honest discussion and dialogue, I'd rather do that than bifurcate the ordinance and cause different problems that, I think we have concerns, we're trying to voice them, but.
Yeah. And let me just sort of bifurcate what you said about the role of the planning commission. I mean, in terms of the zoning ordinance, the general plan and the different elements of the general plan, yeah, that all starts with you. That's how general plan amendments are made. They start with you, how ordinance changes happen. There's a whole other realm of types of policy which are more politically oriented at the council level, and that was all I was trying to articulate.
And I guess the other is the advantage of having a meeting on September 25th is that our next meeting is only 3 weeks away.
And we'll have a council meeting reporting to them the results of the second forum and get some sort of feedback. And just the discussion we had here tonight, I'm sure will be on certain people's radar.
I mean, I guess I'm trying to get my calendar out, but it's the third Thursday of October is like the 16th. So, I mean, it's not like it's not even close, it's not even 3 weeks away almost, so.
Yeah. And we can we can agendize it in the beginning so Mr. Toy doesn't have to stay up too late too.
So is that the sense of the commission? Is to one abstain? Okay, well, I'm trying to make sure that if there's a motion that we don't have a lot more time spent on this if this is where we are.
I can.
That's a whole nother issue. I guess we should have had that discussion.
I have a clarification question. So if we say, yes, this is a great idea, and we send it back to council and it all goes through, there's still a moratorium, or does this
No, as soon as this goes
turn
in,
the moratorium off?
After the ordinance goes into effect, the moratorium ends. And there'll be a first reading, a second reading, then 30 days after second reading, the ordinance would go into effect and the moratorium would lapse.
Did you guys want to talk about if you could all make a different, I can't even talk, a different Thursday in October? Because if you put it off a week, maybe everyone can be there.
But it seems like
I just don't want some of you to miss it.
I think we should have whatever we decide with this isn't, we can't hinge it on whether we're here or not. I mean, I think we have to.
And we don't have to decide on a more appropriate date for all of you to be present at this moment. We can do that between now and when we schedule the meeting. Could also hold a special meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we brought up, not last meeting, but the meeting before, was the idea of having special meetings to address ordinances, and we have a discussion item in a little while of all these other ordinances that are not critical path on this particular issue. And we had brought up 2 meetings ago the idea of having special meetings that are like working meetings, work group meetings, if you will, specific around ordinances, which are a different type of work that we do from the applications that come in. And sometimes it's difficult to have those topics at the end of the evening after we've done these applications. And we offered and suggested that we agendize special meetings, single topic or 2 topics at the most. And I would really support doing that so that we can have a focused conversation. I think it would be helpful to the public because then it would be really clear that's what this meeting is about, and hopefully people would come during those working sessions because it's a great place, and I'm looking out in the audience if anyone's still awake. I mean, that's a great place for people to come when it's a working discussion where we're crafting language and we're talking about stuff, which is a different type of meeting than what happens at the town council at the 11th hour when they're approving it. And they're, you know, so I think that would be really helpful on things like this specifically.
So it does sound like we could express our willingness to even address this sooner if we can, you know, that it doesn't even have to wait. So I know there's a timeline and everything else, but,
so how about
frankly, we've already missed the noticing timeline for the town council meeting, right?
Well, we weren't going to be able to take it for next week, yeah.
Right. So theoretically, even if we had
right.
it,
we have to notice 10 days ahead of time for.
So, so stepping back, asking questions, having a little more dialogue about this won't cause any delay. That it wasn't going to happen next town council meeting anyways. So, okay. Just looking at.
So here's one little catch-22 right now. If you continue this item, since it's a public hearing item that was noticed, if you continue it to a time certain date, we don't have to renotice it. If you continue it to an untime certain date, then we have to notice it 10 days ahead of the hearing.
So the 16th doesn't work.
Can I ask a question about that continuance to the continuance process, procedural question? Given the breadth of the expansion of the conversation, perhaps, that happened up here, how does that play into continuing it if we were looking at, you know, I don't know, a possible recommendation that says you could, here, town council, you could choose to do this or this, and the or this is different from what the this was that was agendized, but it's all part of that conversation. How does that work with the continuance and the agenda item and noticing?
I think if it was too far off what was noticed, whatever you were recommending, the town attorney might tell you that it has to be renoticed and heard again. You know, if it deals with the ordinance, if its focus is whatever you decide to do, at least it's on the topic.
I mean, it wouldn't be completely off topic,
Well,
but as you've seen tonight, we've
I think-
expanded
I hear
it,
you.
not changed. I mean, we haven't, it's on topic, but it's expanded, it's an expansion.
I hear it. Can you give me a moment more? Okay, so you brought up a good point. And I think actually it might be worth the sending out 1,600 notices again with the broadened topic, if that's what we're going to do, because I think it would be good for the public to have the benefit of hearing the wider spectrum of discussion that was going to take place so that people might avail themselves to that meeting, particularly if it's just this subject matter, even in its broader context, at a reasonable hour.
So I think what might be important is that we've expressed that we'd be willing to have. We've expressed that we'd be willing to have additional meetings to try to help the town and town council move the process along. This was presented to us in a way that it's hard to tell if it's part of the process or not. We have some questions that we would like to ask, get better clarity, have a better understanding. I think in looking forward, if we can have that meeting that talks about milestones and all of that, I think it would be beneficial to the town that we would be agendizing meetings specific to those, whatever that critical path is, those milestones, that we'd have meetings dedicated to those topics and not try to embed it after 4 House discussions, so that we can have that participation. And that might be a way to help with some of that communication transparency. So I mean, I think it'd be great if we can just, if we're feeling like we want to talk to the town manager, continue this for a short period of time to have that conversation. If we can combine a meeting that is a discussion around milestones, critical path, and this ordinance, whether it's date certain or not, I think, and I'd rather do it where it's noticed, because then maybe somebody will show up.
I agree with you. I think tweaking the language a little bit of the notice would be helpful, so it's not just noticed as formula business, but incorporates some of the discussion.
So for purposes of tonight, what's that?
That's the part I'm having a problem with.
Yeah.
I think we're getting off the reservation again here. Let's just focus right now. This ancillary discussion about what's really going on or not and your concerns is something separate from what's before you tonight. Let us deal with that in and apart from what is actually on your table tonight. And with that regard, I would recommend you continue this to a date uncertain. Uncertain. And we'll get back to you, pick an appropriate time where everybody can be here for a hearing, a public hearing on this item, and whatever else is chosen to be agendized. And whatever else that may require a public notice will also be publicly noticed.
Is there a motion to that effect?
I make a motion to accept the proposal that Jim has proposed.
Which in short is to continue the the adoption of this resolution of the unnumbered ordinance, and request the presence.
To request the presence of the town manager.
Yep. So those two items.
And any other related item agenda.
No, you got to stay right on
this.
this.
Meeting
you got to
agenda.
stay on this. Yeah.
The meeting can be set and other items can be agendized. Okay. This is just dealing with this specific item. So there was a motion and a second. Was there a second? Did I miss a second? There's a motion. A motion and a second. We'll do a roll call.
Aye.
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 Commissioner Hamilton.
Aye.
Commissioner Lamotte. Commissioner Gonzalez-Parva.
Abstain.
Okay, so it's continued to a date uncertain, and there'll be lots more discussion about it. Now on to item 8, sign ordinance amendment.
Yeah, okay, this is amending the sign ordinance to sort of address in a very technical way political signs going up sooner than the 30 days that are currently allowed to be 60 days, and it's a very challenging piece of regulation with laws and how they regulate political signage and non-commercial signs. So, yeah, excuse me, well, it's mentioned in the staff report, yeah. So this is regarding non-commercial signs, and as you can see, it's allowing them up. The current town code allows political signs to be erected no sooner than 30 days before and shall be removed within 7 days after the election of event. And this would actually expand it to 60 days, but within the context of non-commercial signs, because you can't target political signs per se individually. So do you have any questions?
On the second page, at the very bottom, all non-commercial signs must conform to the following criteria, and one of them is lighting shall be installed so as not to cause glare to passing pedestrians. That's if it has lighting, or lighting shall be installed, because I don't think we want that.
Interesting.
I had a suggested edit saying lighting, if installed, shall be done, blah, blah, blah. Because we're not saying it shall be lighted, it's saying if it is light. I mean, I think that's the intent. I think the intent is lighting, if installed, shall be done so as to yada, yada.
Okay.
Is that what you were talking about as well?
Okay.
That's for non-commercial.
I also want to say, I know it was last minute, but the red line that you guys sent out was really helpful. I would really, anytime we're doing these ordinances, super helpful. Thank you very much. Even at the 11th hour, it was really helpful. And to be able to, for us to kind of go along with it on the red, it's just really helpful. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, that's our standard operating procedure. We've been just running pretty ragged lately.
Whenever it got to us, it was great.
So I think because this was raised, I think it really is for both non-commercial and commercial lighting if we're going to say lighting if installed, it shouldn't be shall be installed. So it'd be 16141F, lighting if required shall be installed. I mean, is that really what we're getting at? If we have a sign ordinance that we're talking about trying to address 60 to 67 days, and then there's language in here that's requiring lighting on those signs, it doesn't make sense that was the intent of the ordinance.
No, I think you just changed that.
It's in the commercial as well. I'm looking at
If you look
ordinance
at the-
785, section 5.
If you look at the redacted design criteria.
1F and 2B address lighting.
Are you looking at the red line or at the, sorry?
I'm just looking at the ordinance itself.
Oh, right.
Section 5, which is page 2, it's 17064-141F. Lighting shall be installed. So this is applying to commercial signs, and then section 2 is applying to non-commercial signs, and it's talking about lighting. So I'm trying to understand, if there was an amendment simply to try to say you have to take these down, you can have them up 60 days rather than 30 days, why do we have all this language about lighting?
Well, I have to confess, this was put together by other than ourselves, so.
Yeah, I mean,
have
looking at the
another
red
thing. Hold on a
lines,
sec. If
2
you
was
look-
added, but.
If you look at the red line and the suggested ordinance section 7 don't match. There's an F in that section that's not existent in the red line version. So section 5 design criteria, item 1E does not exist in the red line. The red line has A through E, and section 5 has A through F. So we've got some language here that's not quite matching. So what I'm saying is the red line is not matching, it's not matching up. So here, what's in the red line of the current ordinance versus what are we calling?
That's the one I did, so I probably made a mistake. I did it twice.
Yeah, it looks like they added.
The red line was done in-house by staff this morning at the last minute when you requested it today.
But
so.
it does look that the language for under commercial 1E, the sign must be designed and installed.
So you're saying that the ordinance that the town attorney did doesn't include something that's in the actual ordinance? Because
Other way around.
It's a new,
Well,
so E is added. It's not in the town code either.
Is this the one,
something that wasn't even.
so is the packet the one that the attorney did and the red line? So if we can call them, if we have names for these, so when we refer back and
The
forth.
red line we tried to provide for you, and we did it in short order this morning when you put the request in.
Sure.
The packet
Was done by the attorney.
prepared by the town manager and the town attorney.
Okay.
Right, so what is being said is that.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's 1E is new.
1E.
Doesn't exist in the current town
Exactly.
code.
Doesn't exist in the red line.
Well, or in the town code section. So E was added, and then F is the same, and then all of section 2 is added.
And E in the ordinance became F.
Exactly.
Correct.
Okay. So, has everyone got that? That should have been in the red line. We'll add it in and then take it forward. We will correct that when we take it forward. We'll correct that when we take it forward to the council. But do you guys all got what happened there? The attorney added an E, probably for legal reasons.
So one of my questions though with what the attorney did was they again duplicated, they took language related to commercial signs and duplicated it as language related to non-commercial signs. Why? Why not just say, and furthermore, neither of those two terms are defined in the definition section. And we are not just talking about all non-commercial signs, we're talking about temporary non-commercial signs. So it was a little confusing to me, one, why there was the duplication, and there's a couple of references to in the attorney's ordinance to the term non-commercial signs, but in the beginning it's talking solely about temporary non-commercial signs, but it doesn't use the word temporary in a couple of different places.
So, we toyed with the idea of having Mr. Toy here or not tonight, and because it was going to be so late and because he has a lot of other duties, I think we should put this over to a date certain to your next meeting on the 16th, and then we'll get you some answers on this, okay? And we'll try to do a little bit tighter job on being prepared with your questions on this, okay? Yeah, we'll get them to prepare a red line and to go back over with your question.
But the redlining, I think that we may need the attorneys here because they're the only ones that can explain why they did what they did.
I mean, your question about the non-commercial signs with illumination, I don't understand the language myself. So, can we continue this to a time certain? I mean, that would be our recommendation.
Do you want any feedback now on other stuff or no? Or should we do that offline and just email it to you and you can talk to the attorney about it? Okay, fine.
All right, then. We weren't trying to push this one off, but all right.
It's not going to impact the election. It wouldn't.
Yeah, they couldn't. It wouldn't have gone into effect until.
To be fair, I believe the town attorney has said that our sign ordinance is kind of a mess, and so in the past they have said that trying to go in and just change sections of it's going to be very difficult, and this was a community. They came up with this, and it's really hard to use. It's hard for anyone to reference. Things don't, anyway.
Okay. So we'll follow up, and we don't have to renotice it if you continue it to a time certain at your next meeting.
So is there a motion to continue this to the next scheduled planning commission meeting?
Are we possibly changing that date, and do we need to do that now if we are?
If it's to the next scheduled planning commission meeting, that would be a date certain.
Unless you want to change that date now.
I'm just saying if we have a quorum issue and I don't know how that works, is if you say a date certain and then you have to change it because you have a quorum issue, how does that?
I don't think we have a quorum issue. I think we're going to be shy a couple of people on the 16th.
I would recommend, and they could be argued later about to
the
next scheduled planning commission meeting. Yeah. To me, that's a date certain.
And these are not time sensitive either, this or the last item.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to continue this item to the next scheduled planning commission meeting.
I second that.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. All right. We're through the public hearing items. The next item is the minutes from August 21st, and I understand that Commissioner Caroline was able to spend quality time reviewing them during her recusal on another matter. So I'm just going to hand it over to you.
Anyway, I have a couple corrections I'd like to point out. On page 2, at the first paragraph regarding the address of the Lima Road is 225 Lima Road, not 22. And on page 6, regarding the 48 Geary application. I wanted to just, I guess, elaborate the sentence where it talked about the deck, and it wasn't really, the deck isn't, it's already outside the setbacks, but what I was trying to say is their first, it didn't have any setbacks. So, however, she expressed concern that the decks did not have any setbacks. I think that's what I was trying to say.
So you want it changed to did not have any setbacks. Okay.
And, oh, I also, on page 7, regarding 2000 Sir Francis Drake, when we were talking about the music, in the middle part, I believe we were talking about who noted the music had already taken place. Might be wrong on that one.
Parking or the restrooms were available at the back of the building, but I don't recall, so it's hard to change it. Does anyone remember that?
The applicant said that she'd already, had music. She did say that. So I guess we just stick it in there somewhere, huh? That she said they'd already had some musical events and hadn't received any complaints.
Yes, that's what I remember.
And Val said that, okay.
Where do you want that put in?
So that would go when Ms. Yandel and Vice Chair Carline discussed live music and the fact that musical events had already taken place. Would that be okay?
Yeah, sure. That sounds fine.
Where's that?
It's right in the middle. It's a one. Right in the middle
Oh, yeah,
of the
there we
page.
go. Okay. Got it.
I don't know if that's exactly where it took place, but we did have
Close
the
enough.
conversation, so that will document it there.
And you discussed live music. So. All right.
So live music events had already taken place. Is that what you wanted?
Yes, with
Yes.
no complaints.
Just want it noted they've already started.
Asking for what they've already done. Yes.
I was being.
Is there a motion to
diplomatic.
approve as amended? No, we got one more comment.
No,
All
I
right.
just have a comment. My name is under approval of agenda, and I was absent.
Oh, I'm sorry about. Ooh, sorry about you.
It's okay. Thank you.
All right.
Just a clarification on item number 8, discussion items. Page 8 at the bottom. The Commissioner Hamilton discussed her concerns regarding the timelines in relation to the housing element. That sentence actually was more, yes, that the Commissioner Hamilton requested that staff come back with an agenda item regarding, yes, timeline for moving forward on our, however you want to, that's what it was. It wasn't around the housing element, it was around the general plan and related zoning ordinances.
So I'm sorry. Commissioner, I would request that staff come back with a timeline in relation to the general plan and zoning ordinance. Will that work?
Sure.
Or
Okay.
staff or return?
Good. Is there a motion to approve as amended?
I make a motion to approve the minutes with the corrections that were noted.
Is there a second?
For the August, what date was that?
August 21st, 2014.
21st, 2014 meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? One abstention. Two abstentions. All right. Okay, so we've approved the minutes, discussion items, the zoning ordinance issues list creation. I would ask to say that we'll keep it on the next agenda. And application submittal requirements, including plan sizes. I know we talked about this, but I'm happy to move this one as well. Just so you're aware, Mr. Moore, is you really missed it last time when there were 7 of us up here like this. And it was a bit comical, so we just raised the issue, because I know I was here when we used to have the smaller plans, and there were issues around that too, so we always go back and forth. But there were a few commissioners that had issues with the lack of definitive measurements that couldn't be double checked with the smaller plans. And I think what Linda said was true. They weren't properly scaled. So it wasn't the size of the plans, it was the scaling that was probably the problem. But so we could have that discussion down the road, or maybe we'll go digital, have them on iPads, but at least for now, we can put that one off till the next meeting.
I'm sorry, there was
no planning director's report on here.
I know, because last time I wasn't here, so it was taken off, and it passed by both of us, so you're welcome.
That's all right. You got enough of our questions already.
Aren't we also supposed to have a commissioner comments and requests section? Not that I'm going to make any. I just noticed that it was
Again,
absent.
I apologize. We have been running really pretty ragged with the tempo of things that are going on. I'm sorry.
So add planning director's report and commissioner comments and requests to the back to the template.
Yeah.
All right. That's it. Adjourned, right?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Do we have to make a motion?
You can make a motion, please.
Make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
I heard a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Adjourned.